of nationhood. You gave us your life the best you could. And now that we're saying goodbye, we lift your name way up high. Your passion we envy. You taught us who we should be. You gave us that victory of one island, one culture, one people together in unity. Raise up flags, raise up flags. The limit is the sky. You labor for your country. Oh, your work is dignified. Symbol of one symbol. Taught us to be strong. So despite our struggles, your work will carry. Father of nationhood, you gave us your life the best you could. And now that we're saying goodbye, we lift your name way up high. Your passion we envy. You taught us who we should be. You gave us that victory of one island, one culture, one people together in unity. Raise up flags, raise up flags. The limit is the sky. You labor for your country. Oh, your work is dignified. Symbol of one symbol. Taught us to be strong. So despite our struggles, your work will carry.
All right. Let me say a special greetings, a special welcome and hello to all of you who are locked into the Civic Vibe space at this time on a social media. Just around 6:05 at this time. We're a little late, but we are there nonetheless. I got a lot of texts, a lot of WhatsApp messages a while ago. Lofty, where is the live? Where are you guys? We are here nonetheless. Please share the live as we are about to make a start here in just a bit. Today being the 9th day of April 2023, and it's all about Alwyn, Dr. Alwyn Bully this afternoon in terms of the conversation that we're about to have here with our very, very specially invited guest in the name of Mr. Simeon Joseph and also Brother Ian Jackson. And last but by no means least for sure, Miss Aileen Burton looking very beautiful this evening. You'll be seeing her in just a while. So please, as we about to make that all important start, we ask of you right about now to please share the live as we're about to dive into the life and legacy of a fallen brother, father, a friend, basically a national icon, not just in Dominica, but throughout the region and by extension, the world as well. So without further ado, I'll get back to the live link in just a while in terms of those of you already here to touch you guys by name, call you out by name. But let me move across to the guests, the special invited guests we have here on the Civic Vibe Space here this afternoon, and say a special good afternoon to them. And that, yes, they can say the hi and hello. That's a brief introduction as well to you guys out there in the listening and viewing audience at this time. Brother Simeon Joseph, no stranger to Civic Vibes, special good evening and welcome to you, my brother.
Hi, Lofty. Good evening to you and your listeners. Good evening to, well, I would say senior classmate. I think that is Ian Jackson. You're 2 years ahead of me in grammar school.
Yes.
And of course, remember morning Miss Millie when I was audition for part. Aileen, of course, long-standing, what can I say? Aileen, so many things. Friend, colleague, amiable person. So, and as well to your listeners, Lofty. So I just like to say good afternoon to every one of you.
All right,
and
thank you.
Of course, I think I need to shout out the family of Mr. Bully as well.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Brother Joseph, for your opening remarks here. Brother Jackson, a special good afternoon to you as well, sir. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon to the whole of Dominica listening to the program. I tried as much as possible to inform people of this program, and it's a popular program, but albeit for Mr. Bully. And I was glad Simeon noted that I'm also a student. I was also a student of Mr. Bully in his time. And so not just a musician and a writer, but also as a student in all different facets of my life. I have learned a lot from Alwyn Bully. And as such, I'm happy to be on the panel to discuss his life and whatever areas that comes up to share such a moment. Of course, Miss Burton, when I used to be in the, I think as a certain time as executive member of the National Cultural Council. Miss Burton was also there, and I know she's a specialist on hair and head business, you know, head ties and so on. So I probably wish I had her to do something for my head this evening, but albeit, yes, I'm just happy to be here and to share with the panel.
All right, my brother. All right, my brother. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the love. And thank you for making it your first time on the Civic Vibes platform here, my brother. It will not be a last for sure. All right, Miss Eileen Burton, a special good afternoon to you as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's the first time as well. I am representing the senior citizens, those who hail from the 50s and 60s. Always was a family friend, and actually late 40s and 50s. This is what I meant to say. Always was a family friend, a childhood friend. I mean, we all grew up in this small community of Roseau. Roseau was really a dwelling city, a dwelling place, you know, for families. And this is how we knew each other, and we grew up together. We went to school around the same time. I was on the executive of the Inter-Secondary Schools Drama Society. I think this was called, I think I mentioned club, but I think it was society. And we worked very well together, hand in hand. So it's a pleasure to be here to speak about Always, this fantastic, multi-talented person.
Wow, I love how you end. Thank you very much, Miss Eileen Burton. We're gonna have a very interesting conversation here. The three of you guys here this afternoon, for sure, you will do justice to the memory of Brother Bully this evening. Let me say as well, like Brother Joseph, a special good afternoon to the family of Brother Bully as well right here. Folks, so you have two numbers that you can call in sometimes later when we give you that opportunity. The numbers to call into the program, just in case you want to have your voice be heard on the program as well. These numbers are 245-2396. Again, I want to repeat, 245-2396. The order being 615-9470. 615-9470. And yes, you can plug in your comments as well on the live feed, and I will try my very best to get those comments across to the very specially invited guests here in the name of Brother Joseph, Brother Jackson, and Miss Burton. Just before I move to the guests here so that they can basically do the talking this afternoon, they will be doing the talking. I'll just be, you know, asking the questions that you guys want to ask from the live feed and, you know, chipping in here and there. But, you know, they are there and they will go much deeper into the details, you know, everything about Brother Bully, his life, his legacy, and how Brother Bully would want us to remember him, but not just remember him, how he would want us to live as he passed on. All right, some of you here, Norma Ito, good evening to you. Owen Prosper, Veronica Pascal, Eliza Louis Gomes, Mali Ostri, Hermelia Watson Duvini, Clarilyn Warrington, Antoine George, Peter Carbon, Angela Paul, Edna Ernest, Janice Jajak, Merlin Norville. You guys are there. Good evening to you in a very special way indeed. Doreen Gorge, good evening to you. Franklin Timothy, Joycelyn Green, Everlasting Peter, Brother Jeffrey Brisbane, you are also here. Miss Challenger as well, you are there. Please, folks, that all I beseech you now is to share the live, make persons know, make your friends know that the discussion about the life and times of Brother Alwyn Bully is on, and they too would want to participate and partake of that all-important discussion here. So without further ado, let me move across now to the people who will be speaking to us this evening as to, you know, just what Alwyn would be saying to us this evening if he was there in the flesh. Brother Joseph, I want to give you the first knock, sir.
Except you haven't sent us the link for the live yet.
Yes, let me do just that right now. Sorry about that. Pardon. Right, let me just do that.
Pardon, Mushe Majestra. Stay on nom Dominica qui fait tout ça.
Ouais, nom ça c'est moi.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let me just again, right. So I've received it. I want to share it, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I should share it first. What do you think? Huh? Let me just see if I can share it for some people.
Yeah,
Hold on a while.
do your stuff, do your stuff.
Let me
Well,
just let me just share because I
I'll take
wanted
up
to
the
share it.
slack in a while. Yes, no problem.
Was
So,
that?
folks, yes, we are there talking
Yeah.
this afternoon about the
Uh-huh.
legacy of Brother Bully. We know Brother Bully was laid to rest this Wednesday gone. He was afforded an official funeral, and it's just a continuation of the conversation, the many conversations, the many tributes that came in as this brother passed. And so this
All
afternoon
right.
is no different a conversation we're going to have. Yes,
Right.
brother, Simeon.
All right. So, well, I want to begin by saying three main things this afternoon. And the first thing I'd like to say as a means of recognizing Aldwin this afternoon is to begin with a quote by Henry Longfellow. And he called this this poem the Psalm of Life, you know. And I think it's very appropriate that I pull up this writing by Longfellow this evening. And I wish to quote when he says, "The lives of great men all remind us and make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time." I think this is very much appropriate as we share on Aldwin this afternoon, because Aldwin was in fact a great man, you know, and his life will always remind us that no matter how sublime it was, his departing has certainly left behind footprints on the sands of time. Another significant thing that I'd like to say before I continue this afternoon is to say that it is also significant that Aldwin was buried during Holy Week. And for me as a Catholic, for those of us as Christians who celebrate that great week, it's important that if I were to just situate it in that week, you know, for me as a Catholic, Wednesday of Holy Week is always seen as Christmas, when the priests of the church, how you call it, remind themselves of their anointing as priests. Now I say that because it is significant. Because many people will maybe think that the death of Aldwin would have cast a dark shadow over the future of things in Dominica. But if I may just use this week that has just transcended as a means of looking towards the future, is to remind us that as we maybe would have planted laid Aldwin into the tomb, that I think his memory, his works will certainly be resurrected, you know, in the fruits of what he has done for so many of us and for Dominica and for years to come. Now, Gabriel Christian, in writing about Aldwin, says one thing, that in his writing on Aldwin Bully, he said the following words: "A genuine hero has died. In essence, Aldwin Bully was our master craftsman of the art of nation building. His dedication to the development of the arts and culture of self-respect improved our society. With great humility, he buttressed our humanity, creativity, and sense of dignity. Most of what Aldwin did, as with other great teachers of the time, was voluntary. His voluntarism in the national interest is most worthy example to be emulated by Dominicans at home and abroad for all time." And I think this is a very fitting extraction from very laudable words of Dr. Gabriel Christian as he spoke on Aldwin. You know, just in beginning this afternoon, very briefly, I'd say that, you know, we in Dominica, for a very long time, will always remember the indelible print and legacy that Aldwin would have left on the Dominican landscape, and most importantly, the lives of many Dominicans. I'm happy to be here with Ian and Eileen this afternoon because I'm sure they can share much more of their times with Aldwin than I can. But he has certainly impacted my life from the age of 12 at the Dominica Grammar School. when he invited me to join the Dominica Grammar School choir and subsequently just be on the outskirts of a play that he was staging called Good Morning, Miss Millie. And most importantly, when he became principal of Dominica Grammar School, I mean, I remember having one principal before Mr. Bully came. And then Alwyn came on the scene, and the whole climate, environment, structure of grammar school was changed, radicalized into such a positive environment overnight. And Alwyn's presence and leadership of grammar school created in many of us a strong sense of social identity as students, a deep desire to serve, a great inclination for outreach, to discover ourselves, to know where our talent lay, to have a great sense of national consciousness, a deep level of patriotism, to search for optimum creativity as students. I remember Alwyn as grammar school principal was constantly calling for volunteers from grammar school to come to help in national things, in carnival, in everything, building costumes at one time, bringing us on board and giving us a sense of what it meant to not only be a young person in Dominica, but to cherish who we are, to explore our potential to the maximum, to discover ourselves, to get to know the beauty in each other, the creativity in each other, and explore our strength, and likewise help each other to build up themselves. Because Alwyn was a very all-inclusive person, full of cooperative spirit, so to speak. Personally, for me, apart from him being my principal and mentor at a very early age, and later on, I'm working with him on Weva Sumon Macaque, where he taught Martinique and I think Guadeloupe, and performed it at the Arabic House of Culture. And also when I played a role with him, Ellen would remember, on Once on This Island as Toto. I mean, and working with him on things like the Dominica Festivals Commission, having him inspire me to begin things like the Rising Stars for the World Creole Music Festival. I will talk about that later. But basically, he played a significant part when we were on DFC together, and I was given the mandate to improve the four-court experience of the World Creole experience. And what I was instructed to do, Alwyn basically called me aside and said, listen, we need to do more. And he was the one who coined the Rising Stars, because before that, it was just coined the side acts, as a filler for the big stage. And Alwyn told me on the side, I have one suggestion for you. Let's call it the Rising Stars, because he believed that the young artists, the young musicians, the culture needed that opportunity where they would be given a platform to think. And one of the great recommendations he gave me was that I should go out and look for talent. Don't expect talent to come to me, okay? And so one of the suggestions he made, and I'd like to say it here today, is that go out and look for talent. And just sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, I would drive to Petit Savan, where ecstasy was discovered, or drive to Grand Fort, or go to a little house in Winston Lane, I think, where Signal Band was, and to Portsmouth, to True Rhythm, and to listen to those bands, hear what they had to offer before I would make a random selection for the cycle. And then he basically helped me to craft what I would call the first production sheet, so to speak, for that four-court experience of the World Creole Festival, which I would treasure very much, of good, solid advice to move on. And subsequently, there were many other areas where Alwyn invited me. I remember one of the most, I would say, frightening proposals that Alwyn made to me was way back in 2013, 2014, when he called me and he said he would like to meet with me with Mr. Hubert Charles in his office at the Financial Center. Aileen, you may chuckle on that one because you may not have heard it before. And he says, listen, we need to revive the National Chorale. And we think you'd be the best person to direct the National Chorale, he and Hubert Charles. Now, I was aghast. I was dumbfounded because I said, hey, there's Paul Christian, there is Cedric Phillip. There are all these other more astute, learned, experienced musicians, and I felt almost intimidated, humbled, I was a bag of mixed feelings. And here were two people, Hubert Charles, a former principal of mine who I had a lot of respect for, and all we know that loving, dying, dedication. And the question was, how could I say no to these people? And so I humbly said, I don't think that I have the capability to revive the night. He said, no, you're not going to do it alone. We will be there with you. And then he quoted for me a title of a book by a Jamaican author, Catherine McShine, that I hold dear today. And he said, inward rich, outward strength. That stayed with me. And he explained that to me as having the ability to reach deep down into your innate resources and strengths and stretch out beyond your imagination and your capabilities. Well, unfortunately, of course, Alwyn began to decline soon after, and Mr. Hubert Charles was sent to Africa on assignment, and so things fell through. And then the other person who was supposed to have been involved in helping to was Mr. Charles Maynard, who became sick. So then the idea fell by the wayside. So that goes to show for me an experience. That one last thing I'd like to say without spending too much time is, we have heard a lot about Alwyn, the designer, the artist, the songwriter, the director, the poet, playwright. But there's one thing I'd like to say this afternoon that Alwyn stands far above many others in, is Alwyn the man. And I'll say it in two simple words: an outstanding husband, an exemplary man, a wonderful father, a loving man. And so apart from all the accolades that Alwyn was and received, and the great podiums that he stood on, and the great platforms that he traversed upon, the person of Alwyn Bully stood out as a simple human being, as a father par excellence. Look at the fruits of his waistloin, so to speak. And above all, a husband that any man could emulate. And I'd like to, because sometimes we can look at the grandeur of people and forget the mere humanity. And that's how I'd like to begin my presentation this afternoon.
Wow, thank you very much, brother. What a profound opening you got there in terms of, just remembering the man himself, as you said in your final comments here, the man, Dr. Alwyn Bully. We have a queen among us here in the name of Miss Eileen Bitton. She said, Lofty, I'm just a family friend of Mr. Bully. Miss Bitton, what are some of your comments in terms of, what you just heard from Brother Joseph, and also, what are some of your own thoughts as you open up here?
Well, he echoes my thoughts, but I think being oldest on the panel, I want to start from a little further back. And I will just read what I wrote. In his teens at school, Alwyn was tall, dark, and handsome, as though he had stepped right out of a Mills and Boon's novel, which is what we read in those days. And I think he was a dream child of any mother and every mother. Apart from this, if I may use this oxymoron, I would describe this multi-talented gift to Dominica as a silent explosion. Alwyn was serene. He worked quietly, efficiently, producing astonishing results, be it in theater, composing a piece of music, a poem, a short story, a painting. The kaleidoscope of colors, as is seen in his paintings, particularly of the sensei costume, is evident of someone with innate flames of passion for his culture, flaring up to the surface. Alwyn was proud of and embraced his creolity. He chose to adopt the best of both worlds, which is what I would hope for the youth of today. We come from two parent cultures, European and African. We are neither one or the other. But some of us have adopted, I'm saying some of us, but many people have adopted the best of those parent cultures. Others have just not bothered to even find out what the best of those cultures are. Alwyn, he was the epitome of our métis and mixed race. He was an example of someone completely emancipated from mental slavery. Someone worth emulating, the same word that Simeon has used. His comportment commanded respect from his peers and colleagues. He didn't demand it, just his appearance commanded it, and he got it. Alwyn sported in the days an Afro hairstyle. He wore a dashiki in the 1960s, but that was in support of social justice of Afro-Americans and to make a statement of and acknowledge his African roots. Forgive me, but this is my age group. Today, I do not know what statement the youth are making with trousers below the buttocks. This is the extent to which our society has degraded. I want to, and I wish sometimes the journalists and news media would discuss certain patterns that appear in the society, have debates on them, discuss with the youth why they do certain things, encourage independent thinking. Simeon mentioned voluntarism, and this is all we did in the 50s and the 60s. I learned that from my parents, my mother, my father, the aunts and uncles. Everything was voluntarism because Dominica didn't have the money. We had people like Sister Alicia, she had the first malnutrition home. We volunteered to help. She opened the creche. I used to go up to help on a Saturday morning. Voluntarism is very, very important in a society as ours. Simeon mentioned social identity, and I just mentioned this thing of the Afro. Another thing Simeon mentioned, which I also was going to mention, was the national chorale. Every island has a national chorale. And yes, he says Miss Christian is there. Yes, Cedric is there. But Miss Christian is there for the church as well. Cedric is there for the church as well. We cannot overburden those people. They're getting older, they're not getting younger. And they have made a remarkable contribution to society. The young people must step up. They must step up. You cannot burn out people because Miss Christian is a music educator. She must do everything concerned with music. No, the government needs to offer more scholarships for people to do music. That is where the state plays a very important part. Then the third thing Simeon said, which I oh, and talking of national chorale, every island has a national chorale. Dominica had a very vibrant national chorale, but from the time Edith left, nothing has happened. Now, if we cannot find somebody from within Dominica, and I'm sure we can, there are people from outside who would be willing to come. This is from the sixth form sister singers were not made or were not formed to be a national chorale. The children were gotten together to bring out their talents. They were not meant to be a national chorale. So I think Dominica can step up a little bit. The other thing Simeon mentioned as well is emulate. And I mentioned it as well in my opening remarks. Alwyn is somebody to emulate. Dr. Lennox Honeychurch, and I quote, "To know is to love, is to preserve." And if we want to preserve characters like Mr. Bully, we have to know about him.
True.
And this is where I feel in this discussion, I hope what will come out, and I would love to talk about particularly the cultural division.
Amen.
Secondly, the education system. And thirdly, the collaboration of government with the private sector, with individuals. Up to you, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, I wish you did not stop, Helen, because you're echoing similar sentiments of myself. But before I go into that, I'd just like to say that you know, for me,
Can I just
like
interrupt
Simeon,
a moment, Mr. Jackson?
no, go ahead.
I am getting messages saying that they're hearing on the program, they're just hearing Carlene's song and they're not able to get the discussion.
Oh well, that's
Anything we can do, Mr. Durand?
All right, let me see if we can mute that song if it is playing in the background. Let me just see if something is happening here.
They're not able to follow the discussion.
All right, Brother Jackson, continue. We'll
yes,
rectify that.
I was saying that like Simeon, and as a grammar school student myself, and Simeon went on to the principal, follow Mr. Dr. Bully's footstep in that area. But before my entry into grammar school, I heard of Mr. Bully, and I knew of his plays because as a young boy, I went to the Art House of Culture and the Carib cinema and whatever, and I looked at his plays, and I was familiar even before I met the man himself. When he came to be our principal in the grammar school, and as Simon rightly said, in the 70s, I think that's the latter part of the 70s, 77, 78, somewhere about there. I was in my final 2 years at grammar school, basically, and he really impacted my life because there's something about Mr. Bully that many people don't know unless you get in contact with him. He has a way that he actually gets the best out of people.
Oh, yes,
and another person I saw that is very similar to that I have met in Dominica is Mr. Ozzy Savre. Even though you're not an athlete, when you met this man and he told you, well, to put on your shoes or whatever and do something, he made you into an athlete. So Olin Bully sort of calmed your fears and actually wanted to achieve certain things. And so when you met him, he had a quiet demeanor about him that he could actually motivate people and get things done. The reason why I have written and I've made appeals, and probably at some time, Brother Lofty might get as part of the program, the song I wrote for Triumph 2 years ago, talking about to name the Art House of Culture after Olin Bully. There's a song saying about we'll all win. If we name the Art all win, you might look at that. Yes, because it's a couple of years now I've been making the plea for something to be named after this gentleman. I mean, we name things after people who have not done half as much as what Olin has done. And I really think that is something that we should register. But as a teacher, and I'm sure Simeon as a teacher himself, a headmaster, educator himself, I'm very despondent that when I go to my classroom, even now, as we speak, and I ask students when Olin died, beyond some of them might know that he was the one who actually designed our flag. They knew nothing of Olin Bully.
Yes,
now, this is
I can see a lot on that. Yeah.
Yes, this is very, very serious in the country. I mean, when I went to school, for instance, and of course, in the time of Simeon, a couple of years ahead of him, but we all went together with Gabriel Christian, and so on. He was at one time, he was our prefect. He was a head boy in the school, Gabriel Christian. We did books like Two Heads, remember Anthony Lockhart and Arundel Thomas and so on.
Correct.
And Eleanor Roberts, we did books of those persons.
And When I Awake by Mark Sylvester.
When I Awake, I just want to tell you Sylvester Mark, right?
And the Dominica story, compilation of stories by all the others.
And remember those days when we got up in the morning, the Dominican story woke us up because around 7 o'clock we played on the BBS radio and we were familiar with our history and our past. This is very sadly lacking in Dominica. And the reason why we celebrate person like myself, person like you, Simeon, person like Ms. Burton, after our generation dies, if we don't do something very quickly, people will not know the persons who preceded us because it's very, very serious. Because Olin is a gentleman that why we celebrate him, I see guys like that come in the world every 50 years. Olin Bully is equivalent to Michael Jackson, is equivalent to Bob Marley, and so on in terms of his status.
Before him, Ralph Kazemi, who preceded him. You're right, every 50 years.
Those kind of persons, yes. That is the level of individual. And what makes him very unique is that every facet of culture he tried his hand at, he was good. He excelled in all of them. So whether it is sculpture, Olin Bully was one of the founder members of the Dominica Writers Guild, which was a member of, as a little boy in 1981. had just left grammar school, and the whole movement started with Dominica Writers Guild. He is involved in playwriting, songwriting, custom building. Where can you find a man? Where can you point to a man in Dominica or anywhere in the Caribbean who has dabbled in so much different elements of culture and have excelled at a level? So that's why I say you don't get persons like that coming in. And he was blessed. I mean, God gave him a talent and ability, but he did not only just use that talent and ability. He honed people around him. He brought people around him, and he did so much. Everybody who speaks about Alwyn will tell you how he actually sort of created actors from people like Panman and so on, that they never knew they had certain talents, And even just recently before he died, I was happy to have done an interview with him. I probably might have been the last person to have done an interview with Alwyn formally in August last year. And I wrote something on the Creole heartbeat of Waddick's Creole heartbeat, and I call him the cultural elder of the century. And he told me something very significant when I was leaving his home. He told me that when I asked him, well, Mr. Bully, how would you like to be remembered? And he responded, as someone who dreamed big and outside of the box and thought nothing was impossible. Indeed, Alwyn always thought nothing was impossible. Apart from his number of accolades he has received, and anywhere he go, if he had died anywhere in the Caribbean, he received the same accolades and maybe even more. Like in Jamaica, for sure.
Oh, yes.
For Jamaica, I sure, because I spent around 3 months in Jamaica, and I did a production in Jamaica. It was a one-man act, basically. I just I think he's living on a place called Jamaica Road in Jamaica, actually. And I asked him to come, if he could come to the production. And Alwyn, surprisingly, I just said it in jest, just go and visit the production. And he actually made an effort, and he came. And I felt I had to perform for Alwyn because I know what he represented, that sort of excellence and want to make people move on. And I really felt good about it. Just recently, last year, some 7 of us from the various secondary schools, we did a program with in terms of drama in education. And it's the first that was conducted in Dominica. It has been going around the Caribbean for some time. But we are the first set of students in terms of teachers that actually the program. And he was my mentor. So I actually went to him to check, and when I got him on a good day, because we all know he is ill and so on. And he even gave me some ideas at that time. So I really got very close to Alwyn Bully, even in his latter days. And I tell you, this gentleman, I don't know. My first thinking when I heard he passed, I said, this funeral should be in the Windsor Park. That was my first thinking. And I thought that school children would be there with flags, all schools would represent.
Right, I thought so too.
Yeah,
that was my vision of a man of that stature dying, and passing away. I thought that would be happening and so on. Albeit it did not happen. I saw some snippets of what took place because I was sort of outside the church. I did not get space to go into the St. Gerard's Hall, but I saw some snippets, and I know there's a celebration of his life at the Old Mill Cultural Center, which I didn't really attend. Somehow I don't know. You might share different points of view from me, but I don't know, when I was small, how we grew up with the 9 nights and the mournful and reflection on people's life. I find a lot of today that a lot of people look and say, there's ask you, well, what, this gentleman dying? He died or whatever, hoping that probably to come to the happy hour, and the happy hour really becomes a happy thing. As opposed to people reflecting on their life and so on. Once you celebrate people's life, but the way people do it nowadays, and it's almost like a party atmosphere. So although I was living in Kingsfield, I felt moved to come. I said, boy, I think when Alwyn was alive, I really relish and honor the gentleman. And I think he knew that, and like thousands, he knew that. And as such, I didn't really feel too moved to go down to the happy hour, because I'm sure the same person who came to the happy hour, some of them might not have come to his church service, because really it was about
actually, no, it
just really about the party.
Just for correction, it was not a happy no, it was a very, very well staged production.
It was,
produced by his daughter.
Okay,
and you missed something.
Okay, yes. I was told that afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it was a normal happy hour, because I saw some on Facebook and so on. Saturday,
but typical of Dominican culture, there was a little drink up after, and that's typical of Dominican.
Yeah. Well, that happened. But this gentleman, there's something similar. I just want to share with the public that I don't know. I guess you both saw Nightbox, and I just showed about the creativity of Alwyn. It stood out in my mind that in that production called Nightbox, if you remember that, Albert Panman Bellot was the villain. and he was the murderer in that drama series, that drama serial. And basically, when they were pointing to a picture, we were not seated in the audience on stage, and they was always making reference to that picture, because I think one of the guys was a painter in the production. I can't remember who exactly it was. It was a painter in the production, and we were always drawn towards that canvas. But we in the audience, we are not seeing what's happening on the canvas. And at the end of the production, the guy asked, "Oh, do you want to see the painting?" Because it's always making reference. And I was there as a young boy. I said, what the first painting then? Because they were talking about it and they're discussing about it. You should put that little thing there, put a little black there, put a little halo here. I really thought it was a great painting. So when I showed it to the audience, it marked the end. And that is how the play ended. I mean, that was so brilliant. And every of all these productions basically had some level of brilliance. He thought out of the box. And when I heard him say about thinking out of the box, that nothing's impossible, and he could take simple things. When he Jesus Christ Superstar, you know what I mean? Fring would tell you, Levi Lubak would tell you, he actually discovered him. Levi, and Levi went into Calypso afterwards, you know, but he actually made people, he created people, he made you believe in yourself. And that is something I always remember about Alwyn. And basically, when I was in Jamaica, Morning Miss Millie, as you mentioned, I think probably that is the play of his that ran the most in Jamaica. It ran for over a year. It ran for over a year in Jamaica and played every weekend in Jamaica, you know, because Jamaica is a big place and so on. And every weekend they stage it a number of times and so on. That play ran for a year. And he got a lot of awards for that play in particular. And so he did not only do his plays, but he could take persons' writings, you know, from their books. You know, because he took some writings from one or two other productions. For instance, Rule and Hyruna was something written by a Vincentian, and he took the book and he converted that into a play, you know, and it was just brilliant, you know. And so Alwyn, you know, is a great Dominican. I really think that he should be taught at school. I think we should be learning about him, or students from first form, because they really don't know Simeon, they really don't know Alien, they don't know. And the other day, just a few weeks ago, Ophelia, I think it was last term, Ophelia visited the school for some matter at the SMA where I teach. And then guys were asking for crests and asking for pins and all kind of things. Just before assembly, they always want things of the secretary and so on. So I saw guys just passing. I see Ophelia sit down there. So I say, hold on, gentlemen, do you know who is that sitting there? They say, no, sir. Look at that. Who's that lady? It was Ophelia. I had to stop the guys and say, look, this is Ophelia. You know what I mean? So I said, tell them, I tried to sing some of the songs that you see. Some of them knew I don't. They say, oh, that's the lady. I say, yes, you must know your people. And that is where we have a nation. And so I really concur with you, Ellen. And I mean, so much can be said, but I guess as the night goes on, we'll speak more about it. So I really hope that the authorities are listening to us, and really, whether it's civics or whatever, or the people that do HFLE and social sciences, social studies, and so on, we really need to infuse some of the work of our people in, so that we can reflect what we are as Dominicans, and we can more appreciate them when they depart this earth.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes, sure, guys. I'm enjoying the program. Lots of folks on the live, they did today enjoying the program. So feel free. It's, you know, sort of, we can just chime in on each other's point as we're moving on here.
Oh, well, if I may, Ian, thanks so much, and Ian, for so many things you guys have said. Because in the realm of culture and education and societal transformation, there is something called the cultural iceberg, okay? And I'm not sure if you can envisage an iceberg, but you know, with an iceberg, what you see at the top may not necessarily be what is underneath. Okay, and that is why the Titanic sunk. And I want to use that analogy, or that allegorical reference, to say that when we look at Dominica today, our cultural iceberg is what is going to determine whether we sink or we float, whether we float or we sink like the Titanic. Because remember, the Titanic was sailing, the biggest ship, the unsinkable ship, the formidable ship, best ship in the world. But it hit an iceberg, and they thought that it was just a small crash ice against this big unsinkable ship, not knowing that below the surface of the water was something much more mega and bigger than what they saw. So allow me to share for the purpose of this discussion, what is considered, so you see the cultural iceberg, what you see at the top, what is easy to see are things like the language, the folklore, the dress, right? The fine arts, the literature, the food, the holidays and the festivals, which is what we are seeing in Dominica. Okay, so that's what we're seeing at the top. Okay, so we talk about Creole language, we speak about patois, speak about the transformation of our language on the island, we speak about folklore. During independence, what do? We just sing about music, we wear the dress, we put the tete cassé, we wear the national wear. We have our dress, how we dress nowadays. We have our fine arts, and which Dominica is seriously lacking. So we don't have a national dance company. We don't have a national pan orchestra. We don't have a national drama club. We don't have a national chorale. When we look at the music lovers, it is something that is given much attention to. We have very few. We don't have a museum of arts.
Of arts, yeah.
We don't have that. We don't have, when we look at our holidays and festivals, every holiday and every festival in Dominica has become a bacchanal of siwo and rum and abusive bouillon.
Dominica is losing its soul.
Every Good Friday, Holy Thursday, Pentecost Monday, every holiday and festival in Dominica has been reduced to some bacchanal of rum and siwo and derivation and food. And then food. What is our food?
Yes.
We eat fried chicken and barbecue and scallop potatoes and what again? And spaghetti and chips and fried chicken all for the year. And we want to run to Callaloo and come back when Creole Festival comes around. But when you look under the surface of that cultural iceberg, what is going to affect all the things we say, what is difficult to see? And that is what, when we think of Alwyn Bully, when we think of Dominica, when we think of the transformative person that he was, when we think of our cultural identity and our future, there are things beneath that obvious iceberg which are difficult to see. Things like our beliefs and our assumptions. So Alwyn had a particular belief and an assumption which was able to create within him something. Our family roles and values, our self-concept, our relaxation, and our authority. What do we do with it? Our manners, right? Our biases, our body language, right? Our beauty ideals, our family values, our gender roles, our attitudes towards school and others, you know? Our rules of conduct, our concept of justice, okay? Our pride, our competitiveness, our expectations, our childbearing practices, our work ethic, our gestures, our thought patterns, our personal space, our aesthetics. This is what is underneath. And if those things are not valued, are not taught, what is going to happen to what we see? So when we talk about culture, when we talk about people like Mabel Sissy Cordero and Aileen Burton and Ian Jackson and Alwyn Bully and Raymond Lawrence, clearly they were able to be those people that they are, and I dare say Anita Bully. And the Bully family is an example of this, because when you look at Shade and Brent, clearly it is the body language, the family values, the gender roles, the ideas that the Bully family held, and the parents as these people grew up that were able to help them to give traction to things like our literature and our folklore and our language. So that Alwyn was able to give us the cream of the crop of the iceberg, what we could see, because what we did not see was what nurtured these people into what they are today. And that, to me, is when we think of the legacy of Alwyn Bully, which is a topic we're talking about tonight, and Ian, you mentioned it, because I spoke to many people about Alwyn. Oh, that he did all of that then. I didn't know he did that. I mean, somebody told me, Mr. was still alive now. Okay? And there are people who don't, and I can tell you, Derry, when I something that hurt me, and I'm going to say it today, I never shared it with the Bully family. But when I was asking certain people to come and do things, the first thing they were asking for was their payment.
Ah,
They have
okay.
to be paid because we have created a mendicant, begging, patronizing society where people feel that for them to do anything for country, for neighbor, and mankind, that they must be giving a penny halfpenny. And they don't understand the difference. They don't understand the difference between between voluntarism and service and paid work. And they see everything as paid work. Alwyn did so much for Dominica, taking out money from his pocket.
Yes.
Beginning the development of the Ken, and all of these cultural groups today who are asking for money for bus and money for food and money for performance. Do they know that if Alwyn didn't steadfastly embark on the voluntarism that he did in the 70s, they would not be where they are today? If he didn't sacrifice his family and his time and his own resources when he started that cultural desk. And I don't know if you can remember when we were at grammar school, already invite us to the Old Mill Cultural Center with a cutlass on Saturday morning to come and clear the ground.
Yes, yes.
We used to walk from grammar school all the way under the Kenfield Cliff and walk back, clearing grass so that the Old Mill Cultural Center today could be where it is today. Lots TAT people, grammar school children, people from Rosa walking to Old Mill to start the rehabilitation of the Old Mill. And we were not given snack. We were not given transport money. We had to find our own cutlass. The most we would do is maybe run to the Kenfield River nearby and get some water or eat the guava, because Kenfield have a lot of guava and cane. That was the spirit of voluntarism that was there today. So when we talk about culture, you know, a lot of Dominicans today would want to think of culture as simply what we see today. And it is very sad. Very sad. Even when you look at what's happening this very weekend in Dominica. On Good Friday, on Holy Saturday, on village feasts, for instance, during our independence celebration, it's all about a bumpsy one rum. And one has to ask themselves, why these things in themselves are not necessarily bad, because culture has different facets, different dimensions, different forms of expression. Is that all we are? We don't have a drama group in Dominica now.
No.
We don't have piety. We don't have New Dimension. We don't have Theatre Powell.
No.
We don't have a drama group in Dominica. St. Lucia has a national pan orchestra. Antigua has a national pan orchestra. Jamaica has a plethora of national drama groups and choirs. Trinidad, the same thing. The Lydian singers, the love movement. Grenada, Dominica hasn't got that. In our schools, music is seen as something that interferes in the process of children's education. And if the children do not get 1 CXCs or 10 ones or 12 ones, they are nothing. In the meantime, they can't even recall a poem, dramatize a play. They can't even listen to a calypso and interpret it. You know, there's all these sorts of things. They don't even know who is who in Dominica. For most Dominicans, there's one person they know whose name I will not mention at this moment. Okay, but at the same time, how are our young people growing up to know who is who, their identity, their social identity, their cultural identity? So in summary, I dare to say today that if we have to think of Alwyn Bully, we have to look at our cultural iceberg. That if we would want to promote and engender and continue to develop things like our language, our folklore, and that's why I'm alien when you see these young people with their pants under, and the way not only the young and people like to give off at the young men with their pants under. What about the young women who walk around with pants that are almost thread, okay, and their bodies outside? And the young women who go around thinking today every dance is a broken and a broken and a broken and a wind down and an ass in the air. I'm sorry to say it that way. But that is it. Is that what it is about? Think of that cultural iceberg. What do we want to be as a people? And if we have to think about honoring Alwyn, there's so many things that we can go to honor Alwyn. For instance, one of the things I would love to see is the Kenfield Old Mill center fully developed according to the original plan that Alwyn had. That amphitheater at the back, right, Ellen?
Yes, 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 yes.
After
Yes,
40
yeah.
years, after
Yes.
40 years, the original plan of the
Nothing was
Alwyn
done.
Cultural Center is more than 60% incomplete.
Yeah.
I would like to see his plan for the revivalism of the botanical gardens. He had a wonderful plan for the recreation of the botanical gardens. Where is that? Alwyn had many great ideas for the rebuilding of Dominica's culture. Many great ideas. And that is where I think we can give the greatest respect to Alwyn by taking his proposals and ideas and giving them implementation. Because in years to come, people are going to wonder who was Alwyn bullied. So we have to look at our cultural iceberg. Because if we do not put into sharp focus the cultural iceberg, what we see today in terms of the lack of fine arts. Dominica doesn't have fine arts. We don't have fine arts at all. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? When we look at how we celebrate our holidays and our festivals, there's nothing germane to Dominica. And even during Creole Festival, the authentically Dominican spirit and cultural mindset and framework is slowly going away. People now only look forward to Creole Festival during our things. Our village feasts, what have become of them? Our village sporting activities, our patronal feasts, what have become of them? Okay? Our food. Look at what our people are eating. Look at the high level of cancer and diabetes and hypertension. So where's the callaloo and the greens and all the regime and the bush tea that our people used to speak about? Parents are said giving their children $10 to go to KFC to buy fried chicken and chips for their lunch. And box drink when Dominica is a land flourishing with the fruit juices. Our folklore. We used to go to the country, and when we go to the country during the holidays, we would go to Tim Tim and the Washesh and the stories of old. Where are those things? Our very language. Our very language. So this is just the cultural iceberg. But if we do not look under the iceberg, under what we don't see, the larger part of that iceberg, as I wish to say, which are some of our beliefs, and our expectations and our assumptions, what is happening. The assumption that we must get paid to do anything for country.
Yeah.
The assumption that we have to do things for political parties. The assumption that we have to do things if we like people or if we don't like people. Our family roles of mothers and fathers. What are the roles of parents in taking children to when I was a child growing up, my father took me to every cultural activity and we had to go. And we had to sit down if we didn't like the belly and the culture. So the parents leave their children home playing Nintendo and Game Boy and they're going out. And young men are growing up from sunrise to sunset in front of a TV, playing with their two fingers, just playing homeboy in front of the TV. Okay? Our relations to authority, okay? Our core values. What are our core values in Dominica today? Can anybody say? Can anybody say? You stop for 2 seconds on the street and somebody's at a bug and they want to honk you down. And perhaps the only way they will allow you to come out on a parking zone is if they themselves want the parking. Enough, where's our courtesy and those things, okay? Our body language, okay? Our interdependence of each other, our family values. These are the things on a deeper level, which is going to determine the kind of society that we have to do. Because you see, we will never be able to have people in music and drama and art and culture if on the beneath surface these values are not promoted to allow children to claim and identify in with becoming involved in culture, in knowing their culture, in knowing who is who, in understanding the greater role in society, and in promulgating the Dominicanness that we wanted. That's what Alwyn was about. Alwyn was about. His creation of the flag, the drama, the plays, the paintings, the music was all about perpetuating what Dominica was for generations to come. And the question I have to ask is, who's going to continue that legacy?
Wow.
Well, Simeon, I can tell you.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation is very, very interesting here. But at that time, we got to take a break at this time. I'm seeing already on the chat a lot of suggestions, a lot of feedback as to just how, what edifice, what monument may be erected to remember Brother Alwyn Bully. So when we come back, we'll have some of that chit chat here. But let's take a break now at this hour. We're going to play a tribute that was done by Colin XP and Co. whilst recognizing the life and times of the brother we are discussing here. Let's take that tribute and then we'll be right back in just a bit.
Your name way up high, your passion we envy. You taught us who we should be. You gave us that victory of one island, one culture, one people together in unity. Raise up flags, raise up flags. The limit is the sky. Labor for your country. Oh, your work is dignified. Carry on and on and on and on. So sad that you are gone, a gem of the Caribbean, a hero quite none has seen, a humble son of the soil, in service to one and all. You shaped our history, gave us a cultural identity. You gave us that victory. Now we stand as one people, one culture forever. Raise up flags up high. The limit is the sky. Labor for your country. Your work is dignified. A symbol of one people, one people. Strong. So despite our struggle, your work will carry on and on and on and on.
Yes, despite our trouble, your work will carry on, huh?
That you are gone, and though we know you are gone, we know your spirit lives on. You left a legacy of pride and dignity. Your light still shines like the sun. Memories forever live on. We are so blessed to be part of your legacy. Raise up flags up high. The limit is the sky. Labor for your country. Your work is country. Symbol of one people. Taught us to be strong. So despite our struggles, your work will carry on. And on and on and on. The limit is the sky. Labor for your country. Your work is dignified. Symbol of one people. Taught us to be strong. So despite our struggles, your work will carry on and 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 on. Your work and on and on. So sad you go.
On and on and on and on. Thank you, Colin XP and Co. Very, very nice tribute for Brother Dr. Alwyn Bully at this time. Folks, we're having that very candid discussion with our three invited guests here, Brother Simeon Joseph, Ian Jackson, and Eileen Britton. So far, an hour has elapsed, and yes, let's get back to our live panel here as we continue on that all-important life and legacy, the whole, how this man lived his life. And so we are all recognizing his efforts here, even if we buried him, last Wednesday it was? Yes, Wednesday. But for sure, his memory will live on in Dominica for a very, very long time indeed. Ms. Britton, I see you shaking your head. There are some more thoughts on your mind at this time.
There are many, many thoughts. This could go on for the whole evening.
I know.
Yeah.
But let me just say that growing up as a child, we had a rich and a vibrant culture that came from within. And as Simeon says, that sense of voluntarism and working for country played a very important role in us enjoying what we were doing. Comparing the days to these days to now, you know, we can see a marked difference, and it's as though the island has lost its soul, and that saddens me. We had vibrant bands, swinging stars, well, they're still there, Gaylords, Bell Combo, and all the others. And what was nice about those bands, they were musical bands. Their songs had melody. They used words that had meaning. In comparison to today, I find a lot of the carnival bands are stuck on 3 notes. And they economize a great deal on words. Words is not a big thing of their music. Yeah. And they're stuck on these 3 notes, repeated as ad nauseam.
Yes, yes.
In school, we had Inter-Secondary Schools Drama Society. It was a grammar school, the academy, the convent high school, and the Wesley High School. We produced plays, and Alwyn was there. Alwyn was the director of a lot of them. And, you know, talking about Alwyn, I need to just mention one other person who had the same passion, and that was Amma Harris. What is wrong with asking Amma Harris to come down to Dominica as a Dominican living in the diaspora and pay her like you would pay any other European who would come down to Dominica to start a drama group in Dominica? She was one of those who started. So she and Alwyn were side by side. We did this thing, Meet Arizona, and a friend of mine said to me, Aileen, I remember that Meet Arizona. I remember where I was sitting down at the time. You know, so those things made an impact. We didn't have a lot of money. And there I need to mention Anita. Anita was a manager. She was the administrator. She was always there. She's the one who saw about costumes. Valda Kuzlatig in the Home Economic Center, she made costumes. You know, so, and everybody helped. Mr. Paul, CHS groundsman, he built the props and for the Meet Arizona. We had swing doors and bars. We were dressed as, I mean, we had a fantastic time when we all came together and to work as one. We had, and other plays like, I think we did The Merchant of Venice. That was done at the St. Gerard's Hall. But these places, I think, like the cathedral, they were made with good acoustics. And this is something that the architects have to think about when they're building in Dominica. We cannot afford air conditioning for large places. And we cannot afford to have windows because we have cars that play loud music and pass. There's no respect. This blaring of music all over. You cannot have windows open at the hour of sculpture. You're not going to hear the play. So these are the things we need to think of. The architects who are building now need to think of making places with good acoustics so that we don't need to use air conditioning and fans. The fans at the Arawak were too loud. You couldn't hear the actors. So, you know, we need to improve on what we have. We cannot compete with the bigger countries because we don't have the finance. But we have to use what we have and do it properly. And this is what the colonials did, no matter how much we want to put them down. But they were attentive to the weather, to the current flow of the wind. Houses were built in a way that we did not need fans. Now we are building monstrosities. And still, there is no place. There is no space. Performers have problems finding a space to rehearse.
Music lovers doesn't even have a place up there.
As music lovers, this is another sore point as well at the, and I have to ask the public to forgive me, but I am going to take advantage of my seniority. I went to Mr. Casimir's funeral, and there was this music lover dress with plaits hanging down from his cap. Is that really acceptable? With long plaits hanging from his thing, from under his cap? I mean, where do we stop? Where do we put a halt? I know we are not children, but all of us need boundaries.
And standards and expectations.
Of course.
And standards and expectations.
Yes. And if the uniforms are too colonial, make Caribbean uniforms that will suit the long plaits if we are going to accept that. Make a uniform that is going to accommodate that, but you cannot wear a proper uniform with plaits hanging down all over. I was very disappointed. Anyway, let us start from childhood. The integration of a child into society and exposing them to the arts and inculcating in them a spirit of excellence. It begins at home and should continue in schools and subsequently supported by society at large. Some children have the privilege of having private tutoring, but what of the underprivileged? This is where the state should take over. There must be political will for this to happen. We also need to develop a culture of collaboration with the public and private sectors and the individuals. Now, having worked in the cultural division and having been a nurse, I could see a big difference. I don't think anybody takes the cultural division seriously. No. And we need to reevaluate what is the role of the cultural division and give it its proper value. As Simeon is saying, these things are just going to peter out. Officials are happy if they can say to Miss Christian, put a group together for a performance. She does it with all her heart. Mr. Lawrence will put a group together from a village or somewhere to do a performance. But it must continue. The education has to continue, and funds have to be put into the cultural division for the officers to be able to continue, and for the chief cultural officer to be able to have projects and carry out those projects. There is so much research and documentation to be done in Dominica. This is not being done because the staff is inadequate. I mean, for Miss Christian and Mr. Lawrence and Alwyn, that was a vocation. A vocation. You cannot call it a profession, it's a vocation. Because as I think Ian or Simon was saying, people they use from their pockets sometimes, you know, to do things, to make things happen. Yeah. Most importantly, we need to develop a sense of national pride and love of self and country. We need to value the traditions and the things that make us essentially Dominican. And I think it is for this reason that Mr. Signoret preferred to the term National Day rather than Independence Celebration. Independence celebration gives a connotation of we can do what we want, it's all right. National Day gives inner reflection. What am I doing for my nation? Am I doing it well? You know? Then if we start from the education point of view, from Montessori level, when I was at convent prep, we were introduced to simple instruments, which we had a little triangle. We used to sit in Miss Garrad's class, a tambourine, little drums, a little shak and things like that. There were a variety of concerts organized, first by the Social League of Catholic Women. Then we had different people who had shows, and then of the secondary schools drama society. We had creative dance groups, as Simeon was saying. Where are they? The late Claudia Joseph and then Rose Keynes. These people, and they did not have training. This is the thing. They did not have training, but they did things. They were creative, and they exploited that creativity God gave them. Secondary schools, carnival band. Alwyn was first and foremost in that. Splendor of Siam, I remember. We had to go to the grammar school and make our headpieces with chicken wire and things like that. It was such a community effort. It was beautiful, and we had so much fun. Dances, school dances at the St. Gerard's Hall. Do they have that anymore? Where the boys from the academy and the grammar school met with the girls from convent and Wesley High School. You know, some time ago when I visited Alwyn, I voiced my opinion, and I think, Jackson, you mentioned that. Yes, from school, the children didn't know who Ophelia was. I went to the St. Martin school, and I was talking to them. I brought a book to read to them, and I was asking. First of all, I did not see any picture of Mother Bodger there. Then I asked the child, "Do you know who Mother Bodger was or Sister Bodger was?" They said, "No." I said, "But how can this be possible? Yeah. How can this be possible? It is true she's not Dominican, but she was Dominican by living in Dominica, by not by birth, but by naturalization. She cared about the children of the community. She's the one who started primary school. These are the people who graduated from St. Martin's School. They were the ones who were the clerks at the credit union. They manned the credit union. They were so well trained by sister. And to think that nothing is left of her presence, we cannot let that happen to Alwyn. He said to me, he was disappointed, and he said to me, "Alien, things must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. If you need any help, call on me." That is what he said. So what can we do to be seen and done to continue his remarkable legacy of civic engagement? Let's start with the cultural division. First of all, they need to increase the budget allotted to the cultural division. It's impossible, and they need to increase that staff. I think Antigua has about 45 members in the cultural division.
Yes.
And Antigua is smaller than us.
Yes.
And I am sure they're what they have left of the traditions is much less than ours. You know, it's like an abuse, because I worked in the cultural division. First of all, we were left out of all ongoing education. When as a nurse, they were always in service training, always. And I said to Mr. Lawrence, what is this at all? Coming from a nursing profession to the cultural division, we just left behind. No in-service training, no training overseas, no people coming down. This cannot go on, especially with this young generation. It cannot go on. So we have to augment the staff so that they can increase ongoing workshops along with research and documentation. We need to upgrade the facility, and you all have mentioned this, including the amphitheater, storage of props and costumes. The old mill has potential. Nigel put on a play, was Echo of the Bones, and that went off very well. We used the amphitheater.
Yeah, Echo of the Mill. Echo of the Mill. Echoes of the Mill. Echoes of the Mill.
Echoes of
was
the
in the
Mill.
title, yeah.
That's right. Echoes of the Mill. I was trying to remember. Yeah. And we need to create space for rehearsals. We can rename the facility to Alwyn Bully Academy of Arts, but I came up with something else. Alwyn Bully Folk Research and Performing Arts Center. And of course, the place is the Old Mill. And then we need to collaborate with the Ministry of Education to have first and second formers of secondary school learn the traditional dances. And that is part of the curriculum. It's not whether you want to or not. It is part of the curriculum. Then there should be workshops for the creative arts. Papier-mâché, how do we reuse and recycle things for Carnival? I find we're ordering too many feathers. Too many feathers. We have things that we can use. Bottle tops, plastic bottles that we are using, plastic cups, plastic spoons, collect them. There was a band I saw in Guadeloupe just this year, and there was a whole headpiece with plastic spoons. Now, if we go around collecting plastic spoons, the children do that, Even from home, you will get sufficient because, as we say, it's Kentucky chicken and and fast foods. Then we can sterilize them, paint them, and make headpieces. This can be done. For reunion 88, somebody had made papier-mâché headpieces, and they were across the street. They were so beautiful. It was Teresa Bruni who did that. And they were so beautiful. What is happening for our youth to use their skills, their creativity, use their hands, get them away from the streets? Conch shelling, conch blowing. You don't see that again. It's left to the fishermen. But I was missing a conch shell blowing for Alwyn's funeral. I thought we would have had conch shells when this
We were supposed to have
down.
one, but the person didn't show up. One was asked to come and the person never came.
And the person didn't. You see, this is why you can hardly find them. And what is interesting about these conch shell blowers is that most of them are fishermen. And after a bout of fishing, they are tired and they have a drink, and that's the end of them. I'll tell you something that happened in Soufrière when we had Heritage Day in Soufrière. Most interesting and so funny. Of course, I said we must have conch shell blowers. We're in a fishing village. So we asked them to come. And who tell you, mass started, no conch shell blowers. But when the communion came, they just came in and it was, oh, it sent goose pimples down my body. It was just so beautiful. So we can't have conch shell blowing out of it. And drama as part of the school's curriculum. There's something that has to happen between the Cultural Division and the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Education. Revive the National Chorale, you mentioned that, and seek outside assistance if we cannot find somebody in Dominica. Because we are few in number, and you cannot cause burnout. You know, as I said, Cedric and Pearl are committed to church, to teaching, to choirs. You know, it's a lot on them. Yeah. Seek assistance from friendly countries for the loan of music educators to establish a small orchestra in Dominica. All that under the name of Alwyn Bully and the Performing Arts. Identify and offer financial assistance to music educators and artists who need working space. The Minister of Culture must have a baseline of the people in Dominica who teach music. And that would be that person's job to follow them up, see if everything is working well. But again, that will and that passion has to be there. That will and that passion has to be there.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Offer scholarships for the learning of the accordion in particular. The old people are dying out.
Yes.
We need musical scores for the pieces of music played for the lancers, the quadrille, in all the different parts. We need musical scores for posterity. All that will come from the Research Folk Center of Alwyn Bully.
Yeah.
No,
I was just telling you, someone is writing there that you are a real historian in terms of the culture. And so I know there are many more stuff that you can say, but in the interest of time, we have half an hour left. I want to give Mr. Jackson a little spot.
Just one thing I want to say with the government band, introduce traditional instruments.
Okay, fine enough. Thank you very much, Ms. Whitney, for your very passionate contribution.
I could go on forever.
I know. But in the interest of time, Brother Jackson, I know you have some
trophies,
things on your mind as well that you'd want to chime in on as we move on.
I'm smiling because I know Mrs. Whitney is so passionate about what she's doing. I mean, Simeon too. I mean, I love to listen to Simeon. I personally tell Simeon that, and I have to tell people that before they die because things just happen to people. Yeah, because he's always such a good orator. And from school time, we used to be doing debates, and Simeon used to be in these debates. So long time, Simeon have the skills, he's doing this stuff. But yes, I mean, all what has been said there is really true. But I think it goes back to what we said earlier on in terms of having a love and respect and values. Because right now, the generation that used to exist, for instance, in the 40s and the 50s, does not
And
exist
Brother
today. We have to
Jackson,
face that reality.
not tripping you. There's this track, All Win. You need to elaborate on that a little bit as well. Yes.
Oh, the song all yeah. Well, the song all was talking about to name the Arab House of Culture 2 years ago after All Win Bully. I was saying this song that how we will all win, and I made it was a pun on all win. We will all win if we name the Arab House of Culture All Win. So that's what was the whole track about. It's written by Triumph. It's a song by Triumph, the Calypsonian. So it's a good song. Probably could pull up. But yes, I was just saying that our values. For instance, Simeon, you were just talking. I mean, just today I was at church, you know, and like most persons, as a tradition, you know, the Easter, you know, and you'd find before time you would trot very lightly when you come to a church. Guys blasting their music, you know, they come to church and they put in higher and they pass by a church. So all those values we have lost, even respect for what, you know, for people's religion and, you know, and all kinds of stuff, all these things have been lost basically by us. And so it's a whole thing that we have to rediscover ourselves. Really, it starts with the up. We do expect a change now to happen from the bottom up. Students today and children today, young people today, we have created a world where voluntarism does not really work. It's about money. And even when I give students homework, they say, oh, Mr. Jackson, I did your homework, you know. Not their homework, you know. I do your homework. You know, so you can see the whole philosophy. So it really starts with our home, really, and the treatment we give. We are hoping that as parents, we train our children so that they wouldn't depart from certain things, because that's what the Bible said, that not depart. But I really don't feel that this country or the world will change to what it was, what existed in the 40s. I think what we should do is to train a new generation, a generation coming up. That is what all would have wanted, to train a generation so that they don't depart from certain things, certain of the philosophies and the values that we hold so dear in our hearts. You know what I mean? I mean, look at today. I saw so many people having barbecue chicken. You dare not eat flesh on Easter Sunday. And we all know that was something that is taboo, you know, whether we believe whether they're Christians or not, which most people in Dominicans profess that they're Christians, you know, Catholic Christians or whatever Christians, but we try to abstain from the flesh just because we reverence the death and the burial of Christ and so on, and his risen today. You know, that's what we celebrate. So even though today you have different philosophies and people say that's not the correct day and all kind of thing, this is just semantics. We are saying that we are honoring a man. At least these are some of the tradition that we are brought up with. And so even those things we don't even maintain. So the values, we need to let people know about the values of the things that we had and we once had, so that they can inculcate in their children and in our children some of the values. Our generation, my generation, is to be blamed for that. And I always take the blame, right? Because I think my generation, you know, Lofty, your generation, Simeon, your generation, we never told our children and educated them to what is supposed to be done. For instance, we give them, students today feel, young people feel too entitled. You must give them that. Even though they don't work, they will get a house. You know, they'll get a house and they can't put a house just by you, so they don't necessarily have to work. You see what I'm saying? So we feel entitled. We are growing a generation of entitlement that they feel they must get that. So I tell my boy, okay, but my brother, if you want to drive my vehicle, if you want to do so and so, go and wash my vehicle. I'll give you $5. Right now, you're paying a man to go and wash your vehicle, and your son is at your home. You know, so that is the generation we are growing up with now. It's a terrible thing, but that's what exists presently. And we in a generation where people want money for everything. But I must say, we have the persons still in Dominica, praise God. I mean, I speak of people like Adriana Henderson. You know, Nigel Francis himself did so much. Steve Hyacinth did so much. But all those persons are of age. They are into their late 50s, 60s, going to the 70s. And so a replacement for that generation, for Simeon's generation as a partner, a guy involved in choirs, and I've done so much in choirs and so on. To replace that generation, we now have to make a radical change with our education system and put in certain programs within our schools. I mean, today, I think sometime early on this year, they had a celebration of pan music outside. I mean, I seen Afi Mate at his age now struggling to play some pan. You could not get young people to play pan in Roseau, you know, and that is something else, you know. So we have lost those values and those creativities we had in us. And it's not a matter of money, Miss Burton, it's not a matter of money. It's our focus. So in some areas, we know where to find the money in Dominica to do certain things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Find the
yeah.
money to do.
I
It's
agree.
not a
I
matter of
agree.
money. It's how we distribute and how we allocate funds to do certain things. And culture is
Yeah.
not a priority. I can tell you, for the
It's
first
not.
time in my life, I think I have a history of winning the most poetry competitions in Dominica. I just, after a number of years, just decided to take part in short story last year. And I happen to have won it. And like others, even Arundel Thomas, who I learned under at school in terms of poetry and so on, who taught me, we spent 3 months to get paid the little stipend for winning. You know what I'm saying? That have never happened to me before. So our emphasis on culture and the arts. And sometimes they ask you to do something, come somebody say, Jackson, come and do that for us now. Come and play some piano, come and do some poetry, come and play some music. They paid everybody else, they pay the servers, they pay the caterers, they pay everybody else, and then the musicians have to wait for a long time to get paid because we don't place any value on the service that they do. And so these are the factors. So that is why I see men talk about the iceberg. There's something lurking below. There's something lurking below to come. And we'll find, even though, look at shape. We had shape in Dominica. Look at the buildings that have been built right now, even by the Chinese. There's no structure in Roseau. Roseau was known for the verandas and the jalousies. This has
The
been
French
lost.
architecture. French
French
architecture.
exactly, French architecture like New Orleans and those places there. That's what we are known for. We're a quaint little city. It's been lost today. You know, so all those factors. So I say this must start from the top. And personally, I find people may say all different things, but I find that we have always had for a long time very weak ministers of culture, you know, in terms of taking a direction in our lives and so on. You know, so I really, and these things has been recent developments, really actually over the last 25 years, because before we used to have all these plays by the Goodwill School when Steve Hassan, for instance, was principal of the Goodwill School. We used to have a lot of drama competitions. I myself I used to be involved in doing things for certain persons and so on and stuff like that. But all this has been lost. Look, this year, only this year, we had the Calypso show soon will be lost because this year we've introduced for the Junior Monarch a Bouillon Monarch competition. You know what I mean? So we're not understanding our history. Cornel Phillip understands our history because he's between the older generation and the younger generation. In that, when the bouillon music started, see what they used, the conch shell, the same conch shell you're talking about, that's the foundation of bouillon music, and the accordion. If you ask the younger generation, maybe the guys from Triple K or maybe from Signal Band, they may not be able to articulate properly why do they use the accordion, why they use the conch shell as an integral part of their music, because they don't understand the history. So we are people void of our history and growing up not knowing our history. And so we'll not know persons like Olin Bully unless we now bring it to the classroom. The history teachers have to take it off the streets. I brought Jeff Drat, SMA. I brought several persons. Gordon Henderson was there the other day doing something with SMA. I brought students there because I want them to know. I brought Mr. Franklin Georges, you know, I mean, Alwyn Bully. I get them to read Alwyn Bully plays, you know, and stuff, you know. He had, I can't remember the production, but he has one of the plays that I gave him to do about some JD DJ or something, sir. See, many might do it. DJ, something like that. So he had a small play for radio called JD DJ, right? And I gave my students to do that actual production because I try to infuse some of what, although I teach literature also apart from business, and I try to infuse that. So it takes up more persons like that in the classroom and also policy makers to put policies in place to say, well, yes, a student has to do literature. They have to do something, a Dominican. All the schools must have a piece of Dominican literature as part of what they do at school.
Yeah.
You can't be reading only things about, you know, Jamaica and whatever. Yes, they're Caribbean, but we have some things that are unique to us. And we want to hear about the mountain chicken. We want to hear about the crapo. We want to hear about stories about it, not just about Bear, Brian, Nancy, and so on. We have to have things relevant to us. The Sukuya, the Laja Blairs, and we want to hear folk tales being told at school. And some of the songs that he spoke about, Mr. Burton, that we want to have those things brought back into our choirs and singing and so forth. And so I think that is where we're going to make the change. It will never be as it was before, but I think all is not lost. All is not lost. And we can still do something if we try to inculcate some of those things that we have learned. Some of the things that Mr. Bully taught me, I try to implement it in my classroom. And as a result of that, if some of us take that approach, including those in authority, I think we can still reap some benefit for young people in terms of their value and the direction of their lives, and also sustain our culture as we know it.
Okay. And if I may say, development must have certain foundations, okay? And you cannot develop a country if you do not have a solid foundation between the past the present, and the future. That is the connectivity.
True.
But there has to be that what you call philosophical thread that weaves through everything for continuity and perpetuity perspectives. That's where Alwyn Bully came in. That's where some of our heroes, and to me, when you look at Alwyn was that link from the past to the present to the future. Okay? Because he was a custodian of our history. He valued the transformational things that were taking place in the present day society, and he was still able to project the past and the present to how he would like to see Dominica to be. Okay, so I would just like to interject and say, if we had to really look at where we want to be, let us look at the 3 Ps: our philosophies, our principles, and then our priorities. Because our priorities will determine our practices. So what are our philosophies? We cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are certain traditional, historical, heritage aspects of Dominica which define us, which connects us to our ancestors, which tells us where we are and gives us an understanding of where we are today. Okay? And for us to advance, we have to be able to look at what are those philosophies that bind us and weave us together, and how can we strengthen those philosophies in terms of our thinking, okay, our ideological processes, because that is what it is. If this isn't strong, then we can change anything as is happening today. Then we must also look at our principles. What are our principles? What are our principles when it comes to culture? What are our principles when it comes to education? What are our principles when it comes to social cohesion? What are our principles when it comes to youth development, education? Those sorts of things there. And that is where people who have been charged with the custody of promoting our culture and our heritage, must ask themselves, why am I in this position? And so every minister of culture, that's why, and Ian, you said we've never had a minister of culture, but no, we had H.L. Christian. We had H.L. Christian who saw in Alwyn somebody, took him out from the grammar school, created the cultural desk, and supported his movement towards establishing the Old Mill Cultural Division. We had Mr. Christian and Mr. Iolibla.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's why I said the last 25 years or so.
Let me just butt in there, please. I did not say we've never had.
No, not you, Ellen. No. That was Ian. In recent
the last 25 years.
Because I know of Mr. Christian,
right,
and thank God for Mr. Libla.
Right.
Oh yes.
So we have to understand it. But my point is, if you understand your philosophy, you will develop principles, and that is where people who are charged with the custody of those officers. So a prime minister, a minister of culture, a minister of education, a minister of social service, and a minister of youth development has to ask themselves, in essence, what are the principles that drives where I am today, so that while I am charged with the custody of education, how do I ensure that the philosophical, historical antecedents are maintained, promoted, and developed? And then that would determine our priorities. And somebody asked me, why is it that up to now the Arak House of Culture cannot be renovated to its fullest? And somebody asked me, why is it that we had to close down the Kyrie School of Music? Can somebody answer for me, how is that the Music Lovers Government Band does not have a house of practice? Can somebody tell me that we don't have a significant proportion of our budget going to the cultural division for the expansion of culture? You know, can somebody tell me how is that? I mean, Mr. Bully, Alwyn Bully was not bankrupt of ideas. And if we have to do some research in the ideas that that man had, anybody, and decide, okay, I'm going to embrace it, even if it's 60, 70%, to see where we can go, and develop, and that is it. So our practices will and Ellen, I don't believe we don't have money, because there's lots of money for lots of other things.
Oh, I know, but it's just the thing.
So for instance, do you know that in the 60s, every primary school in Dominica had a piano? Yeah. Do you know that in the 70s, we had Mrs. James going around Dominica and H.L. Christian's wife going around teaching arts? Are you aware that 30, 40, 50 years ago, arts and culture and music was very much part and parcel of the primary school education system?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Secondary school as
And
well.
our principals must ask themselves the question, how
Yes,
many of our
yes.
teachers know who Alwyn Bully was? How many of our principals know about Alwyn Bully?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of those who are charged with the custody of education in Dominica take up the responsibility to say, why am I sitting in the role as a principal? When Alwyn Bully was principal of grammar school, every Monday assembly was dedicated towards telling us about something about Dominica. Every national event that took place, there was an assembly who would inform the whole school of what had happened, who is who, and what had happened.
Yeah.
Okay? No. Today there are schools with houses, and the students in the houses don't even know why a house is named after somebody. Most of our schools have sports day, and before they can think of the physical and how you call it, sports education, they think of barbecue and fried chicken and ice pop. That is what sports day is about. It's a fundraising activity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where sometimes quarter of the school is involved in physical education and sports, and the rest of the day is fundraising. And you know what they do? You know what many of our schools do? Instead of building the art form, the talent of children, they invite bouillon artists to come to sing and perform for the children.
Yes,
so there are school activities, there are school musical activities, there are school cultural activities, and the children sit down watching people from outside. Are you going to tell me that in school, remember schools used to have talent shows?
Yes.
Congress Day, Achievement Day, where the children would prepare different presentations and prepare themselves. Every school had a choir. Every school had a choir.
The convent was famous
Every school
for that.
had a drama club. And so when there were school activities, the schools would perform. Not every school that have an activity, they have an outside DJ, and they have an outside bouillon artist, and they have a Triple K, and they have a Shelly, and they have outside artists coming to perform for the children, whereas the children in the school themselves. And so all they're interested in is an opportunity to raise funds and not developing the talent of the children, not developing the artistic skills of the children.
That's what I said, Simeon. It has to begin at school.
Right.
It has to begin with the Ministry of Education.
But not where it begins. But the question is, that is why I'm asking, what are our priorities?
Priorities, yeah.
When you have a teacher, when you are a social studies teacher, you have to ask yourself, what is your priority as a social studies teacher? The CXC is the common entrance. When you are a literature teacher, you have to ask yourself, what is the priority of teaching literature? When you have a history teacher, you have to ask yourself, what is my priority of a history teacher? And similarly, if you hold the position of same thing as cultural officers. Can our cultural officers now convince our cultural men and women that their performance is not just for money and reward, but for the development and the advancement and the thrust of culture in Dominica? Because I'm sure there might be cultural officers who will understand and confirm and endorse that for cultural groups to perform, they have to be paid. And they will come and tell you, and that is it. And so we have to understand, what are our priorities? What is our driving force behind those things? And we're talking about Alwyn, and so we have to look at Alwyn the man, Alwyn the person, Alwyn his philosophy, Alwyn his principles, Alwyn his practices, Alwyn his priorities. Because if you understand Alwyn the man, you will clearly understand his philosophies in life. You will understand what were his principles in life. And
Simeon, can I just interject here? And just want to put out the possibilities of including Alwyn's name. Like, for instance, I think in Jamaica, there is a Rhodes Scholarship for an all-rounded student.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. So can we have an
yes,
Alwyn
and I'm coming first. Yes, and I'm coming further. Now, let us look at the names of our streets in Roseau. Great Marlborough Street, Great George Street, Hillsborough Street. Let me just finish. King George V Street.
So King George V.
Yes, but what I'm saying also, Aileen, so can our young people not walk the streets of Roseau knowing that the streets on which they walk are named after some of the outstanding Dominican people who have
I do agree
contributed
with that.
to
I
the
do
thing of
agree with that.
country.
So the
Many
National Cultural Council needs to
exactly,
make the
and
proposal.
so we're
But I
talking
would
about
also like, I would like to propose also that emancipation celebrations be changed to Alwyn Bullies,
well,
for information, rename Emancipation celebrations as the Alwyn Bully Festival of the Arts. I don't know what emancipation we are celebrating. And if we have to celebrate, Alwyn was one of these icons, and he was the epitome of an emancipated
well,
person.
what I would suggest
So we
in
wanted
all
to
of
change
this,
that.
honestly, what I would suggest in all of this is, while we may have several recommendations, I think it is time that Dominica, okay, sits down and
Yes,
decides how it's going to go forward. And
right,
that's the point I was going to make.
right.
Recognizing certain
Well, we're
days
giving them
and
suggestions. We're
well
giving them suggestions.
right
Like, for
and
instance, radio
and
stations, they play an important part as well.
and
And,
name
like, and playing,
and
reading his
names,
stories,
right, and names,
playing,
etc. Yeah,
putting on his plays on radio, like they used to have,
and
which
yeah.
one?
But what I'm saying
Alistair
is that
Macaulay.
my point is, Aileen, that we have to think of working as a collective.
Yes, that's what I'm saying,
And that is where
collaboration.
national cooperation comes in. And again, that is
Right.
where I go back. That is where I go back to practices. Because a minister of culture, a minister of education must ask themselves, what can we do to perpetuate those things? I don't want to because you are given the honor of office development purposes. Okay?
Mm.
And so we don't have a national heroes come. And even when you look sometimes without wanting to be too critical of our independence national award, sometimes you ask yourself, what have some of these people done to be? So you hear some names and there's no national significance. You look at what Jamaica has done. Jamaica has actually tiered its national heroes awards. Okay, Trinidad has done the same thing. They have classified it. In Dominica, there are people who get all kind of awards, and I don't think maybe you and I, as much as we're involved in Dominica, don't even know what these people have done. Okay, so what I'm saying is that we have a lot of work to do in Dominica when it comes to educating our people of who was who and how we need to move on. We have a lot of work to do in them of coming together, so to speak, of bringing the great minds of Dominica. Okay, ideas can contend as much as possible, but I think it's high time that some person with initiative and a thinking process and initiative uses the opportunity of service and position to say, okay, what can I do to bring the best of minds around a table in Dominica so that we can strengthen a sense of our history, our heritage, and our traditions. That has to be done. Okay? And I think, people are like, okay, so and there are many people who, what have we named after Eoli Blanc? What have we named after Ethel Christian?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
What have we named after Patrick John? What have we named against people, Mabel Sissy Cordera? What have we named against all the people who have done so many great things for Dominica, like Jamaica has done? Look at what Jamaica has done to recognize the national heroes. Look at what Trinidad has done. Look at what Antigua is doing to recognize its national heroes. You know, we have to have that think tank approach, a collective discussion and decision-making approach in Dominica. Okay? The custody of thought process cannot reside in one brain. Okay? It has to be this collective national effort where people feel a sense of belonging, where people have a sense of participation, where people can basically generate all the ideas. Because when you walk around Roseau, there are several Dominicans. Well, what have we done for Mr. Ralph Kazimi? Okay? There are and if something is not done now, like Ian is saying, the generation to come will not know because it is generation now. Those of us in the custody of knowledge, like you, Aileen, Raymond, the people who are still existing today, Anita Bully, who has to say, okay, gentlemen, for the future generation, we who are alive today, we have this responsibility to leave a legacy of knowledge and education for those coming behind, because you know that they will get it from Suki Burnbrain, from Kenny G, from those kind of bands there, from Chip. That is where they'll get it from. And that's how they'll come to understand our
So
culture.
we're going to have an
That's what they're
all-win
running behind.
foundation, Simeon. We are going to have an all-win bully foundation where we will write projects, get funding for scholarships for the arts, for music, for drama, to rename the streets, to rename different houses, radio stations. I don't know whether that belongs to the
National Emblems Committee?
No. Something else I was going to say, it is in the realm of the family to compile Alwyn's poetry and his books so that they can be put into the curriculum for the children of first and second forms. So that they do that as, I think it's social studies, they call it now. I think
you remember long ago there was a book, Caribbean Heroes. You know, again, Aileen, we're not concentrating on one person too much. We need a think tank approach. So we can even compile a book.
But we're talking about Alwyn now, you know.
Great Dominican heroes, for instance.
Right.
We can also have people to look at how do we rename our streets? How do we rename our major buildings? How do we approach for that? Because I think it is very important that at this juncture, and yes, you're talking about Alwyn, but Alwyn is such a towering, iconic figure that perhaps we need to use the transcendence, so to speak, of his passing, to use that opportunity to awaken us to realize that we've all been passing. We need to do something. We need to do something.
Agree. I totally agree.
Yes, folks, thank you very, very much indeed. I know we are going at it here. It's already what? 4 minutes to the good hour of 8 o'clock.
Wow.
What we have decided to... Jackson, are you there?
Wow.
Okay.
Ian,
yes.
Yes, Jacko, we need to hear from you.
Yes, I'm there.
We'll be going a little further than the 8 o'clock hour tonight, for sure. Your camera is off.
Okay.
Okay. So where are we?
Yes, I'm back. Basically, I just not getting my camera on, but I'm sure you can hear me.
Yes, we are here.
Yeah, I just went to plug it up because I had a little problem if my power was going.
Okay.
But I guess
all right, but we need to hear from you now because the conversation
yes, I'm going to do it now.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, basically, so much has been said, and I'm really in favor of what Simon has been talking about having this generation, knowing about our young people. And he mentioned about the Sukui Brain. I'm very, very concerned about the type of music, and music is the biggest influencer of young people right now, because basically all the songs that we hear and the sentiments are being echoed by the songs that we hear. And not that alone. I mean, there was a time that DBS radio was, head and shoulders above all other radio stations. In other words, we took our cue from DBS. But when I hear some of the DJs, especially when you have the people for DJ Cell and so forth on the various programs, and the type of songs and the suggestive lyrics that is being, not even suggestive, again, it's almost direct. I mean, suggestive is when Sparrow sings about lizard run up she foot and disappear, but right now it's so direct in what they are saying right now. And it is something of grave concern. So we're and these are actually our heroes, because when when the DJs and so forth promote those type of people, then that's basically what our children, like my grandchild, that's what my grandchild will know, seeing that, thinking that is the standards for Dominica. And it's very important that we do not make it reach that level in the country. I mean, I remember play of All in Bully where he said, where he had the thing about we have TV though. He said, we don't have this, we don't have that. We don't have dogs and we're fighting like cats, but we have TV though. So basically, we have to find out as a country, what is our TV? What reflects our life? What is the yardstick? What is that we put in front of our people and make it be a reflection of themselves? And basically what we are doing now is not it. And Orin Bully, I've spoken to him a few times already, and he expressed a lot of concern about what we're actually projecting. And that is one of the reasons why he had all those plays, because apart from having all.
Wow.
They've gone off.
Why?
I guess his signal is
and
dropping at this.
The Dominican society, and also gave advice and spoke to politicians, or spoke to all facets of society. So basically, while I endorse all the accolades what Ms. Button is saying, I still stick to the Our House of Culture, but I think that is what he is known for, his plays, as opposed to the streets, some edifice. And I think the Arak, or even the Old Mill, as Simeon mentioned, might be a good place to start in terms of naming something. So when a young child is passing today or tomorrow, they can say, oh, you can say, well, this building, this man, Olin Bully, he is named after something. Because even our houses, as has been mentioned, the Dobini houses, the Michael houses in SMA, the students really don't know why that house is named Michael. So really and truly, we need to educate our young people. And I think that's where it really, really begins, because we're losing our sense of value or identity. Christian Musical School, for instance, in Dominica, trained a lot of musicians. And Ellen mentioned about Swinging Stars. Swinging Stars have been the sort of the grazing ground for many musicians. Almost every top musician in Dominica passed for Swinging Stars. The Fred Nicolases, the Fitzroy Williams, all of them. Even Cornell himself, as a top musician today in Dominica, has passed through the Swinging Stars, the Smokey, and all those guys. So you see, a country must have its breeding ground. We had PAT as a breeding ground for many people involved in drama. We have lost that. We had the national chorale, we had the folk singers. That doesn't exist again. So we now have to find some new entities, to fill those roles and to fill those voids and to shape our young people and to design the people that we want for tomorrow. Because if we don't do that, and we are more paying servitude to politicians and people and so forth, as opposed to looking at national development, we are going to reap a very, very sore future. And that's where I'll end that.
Yes.
Yeah, and
all right, gentlemen, gentlemen and lady, as I said, we'll be going a little past the 8 o'clock hour tonight. So we'll be having some more thoughts of the panelists as they come on. But let us go, Simeon and the other panelists here, to the live feed. A number of persons have been making comments, and they are part of the conversation as well. Please take note of the points so that you can please feel free to comment on some of what you have been hearing from them. Claralyn Warrington writes, a very good program this evening, folks. Leandra Laidlow writes here, with all the deliberations, we need cultural reform, and that's in caps for emphasis, in the truest form, based on bringing our cultural and heritage at the fore before we lose it. God bless always. Carol Fontaine writes here, we have lost our cultural values. Don't talk about our historical sites. Althea Rennie writes, no appreciation for our heritage. Anna writes here, I remember Miss Sonia Lloyd at vocational school teaching us to play the guitar and folk song in Creole. Althea Rennie comes back and right here, oh boy, Miss Sonia Lloyd, she was a masterpiece at those dances. I looked forward at those days at St. Martin School. Just being part of this dance group gave your self-esteem a push. And so, folks, there are many more comments. I'll get to some in just a while. But based on what you heard, Simeon, Ms. Burton, I think Ian dropped off for want of better signal here. Any thoughts based on what the...
No, I'm there. Just gonna see my photograph.
Okay, yes.
Well, right. certainly. So
Ian, trying to rectify the camera, please. Yes.
Well, certainly. You see, people may think, right, that what develops a nation are the number of concrete structures you have, or the finely paved roads, or concrete edifices that defines development. You may have all the fancy buildings in your capital cities and in your villages. You may have all these major infrastructural elements around your country. If your people are without a soul or a sense of their history, they will lack development. And very soon, the very edifices which you build for them, they will not appreciate it beyond measure. because they will see it as given to them without any hard work, without any toil, and not knowing where it came from. Okay? And so we need to understand that the bedrock of social development and people's enhancement is education and culture. Okay? These are the two things. It's how you educate your people and how you form your people. This is what is going to enhance your tourism industry. This is what is going to foster proper teachers and policemen and nurses. Because if you find, for instance, in other, and that is what is going to eventually give you the kind of politician and government that you deserve. And we cannot underestimate those tenets, okay, of real development, you know? One of the things I often bemoan, Loftus and the rest of the panel, is the fact that, and I hope I'm not being too political here, but we have been able to establish diplomatic relations with 3 major cultural countries: Cuba, Venezuela, and China.
Yep.
When you look at these 3 countries, Cuba is rich in culture. Cuba has a plethora, numerous drama teachers and music teachers. And
yes.
China is no want for people in sports and culture. True. Venezuela, the same thing. When we establish diplomatic relations with those countries, instead of asking for all these edifices, couldn't we not have asked for hundreds of music teachers and drama teachers and all to come to Dominica to do bilateral relationships to teach our people? Couldn't we have done that? Right? I mean, anybody must be and see what they do. Look at how they happen to develop them. Yes, I'm not saying we cannot ask for certain things. Their people are rich. They have invested in. At one time, Venezuela had an orchestra in every school at one time. And even the army had a big orchestra. So the question is, we have to ask ourselves, how do we capitalize on our liaisons and our relationships as we seek to develop our people? Because you see, Eileen mentioned it earlier. I mean, since independence, how many Dominicans have we sent to study music?
Yeah.
Since independence, how many Dominicans have we sent to study drama? Right. Since independence, how many Dominicans have we sent to study all the different things? How many? And even people who try to go have to struggle to get it done. Exactly. We have how many people doing business management and economics and all those kind of things there. Okay.
Just to add, without interrupting you, Simeon, the last persons we had studied at a degree level was when Steve Hyacinth, Earl Etienne, that's some 40 years ago. And
40 years ago.
Flora Morrow. That was
and that's why I was talking about priorities. That's why I'm talking about priorities. It has to be a deliberate national approach if we are to develop those things. Just as Mr. H.L. Christians could identify Alwyn Bully and Mema Joseph and Pearl Christian and all these people and say, okay, no, we need to develop that sector for our country. Go to study, come back, make your contribution. When last was this done? When last was this done? Exactly. And we are overlooking the fact that most of our Dominicans it's under 45. Put it under 45, because even when you look at people between 30 and 40, people who might interface with a lot, they don't know who is who in Dominica. They don't know the history of Dominica. They don't know the background to many things in Dominica. Okay, and that is sad, because these are going to be the parents of tomorrow. Right. These are the mothers and fathers who have to tell their children, like, this is so, this was Mr. This was Mr. That. If the schools are supposed to do it, education begins at home. That's where that's where it's fertilized. And so parents have to be mindful. There are parents who call me, all the time and ask me when their children are doing primary school assignments, who is who, and some of these people are lawyers, business professionals, bankers, policemen, even teachers. They will call you and ask you questions about who is who and what is what in Dominica. That's something very serious. And so we have to take this thing very seriously. And like Aileen, I'd like to emphasize and I'd like to say that I'm happy for this program tonight, and the passing of Alwyn Bully must signal for us the creation of a significant void in the cultural resource base of Dominica. And that should impel us, everybody, to think and say, with Alwyn Bully gone, what can we do now to ensure that the next generation of people, or the adults now, because as I said, there are teachers and even principals in high schools and primary schools don't know certain historical facts of Dominica. And so the Ministry of Education, and can somebody tell me why, for instance, the Ministry of Education, okay, did not make a public announcement for school children to line the streets of Roseau or to send contingents of students with flags to Alwyn Bully's funeral? Doesn't that signal a significant void? An absence of thought?
Good point.
Every school teaches social studies. Can somebody tell me why that thought did not take place? Not from the policy makers, not from the administrative section, not from the manager. Nobody could say, okay, let us see how, and look at where the cathedral is located. SMA is there, Wesley High School is there, St. Martin is there, Convent is there, SMP is there. Maybe just the schools alone around the cathedral could have been commissioned to line the streets with national flags for the design of Dominica's flag. Okay? I remember the two first principals I called, we tried it as organizing. First thing they said, oh, school is closing, report cards are giving out. We have all kind of excuses as to why it should not have happened. I just gave up on it. But one would be impelled to respond, immediately, as to what can we do? And that is, I want to close on that point. One of the things I am very, very, very concerned of in Dominica is that many of our national icons are passing on without any level of recognition. Just look at it. Sonia Lloyd's funeral was hardly attended. Mr. Kazimi, who served as the conductor of the Music Lovers Government Band for years. We have very significant people in Dominica who are passing on. And when they pass on, it's like they were nobody. They did nothing for Dominica. This kind of selective approach to recognizing people and their contribution to Dominica will not pay us well. We have to be mindful of who is who in Dominica, not in terms of money and position, but in terms of contribution to the country. Not in terms of money and position, okay? But into a power, but in terms of contribution to country, okay? I have seen former teachers and principals pass, and not one child in uniform from the school where they were principal is at the funeral. There are principals today who have inherited positions of principalship from former principals, and a former principal will die, and sometimes not a teacher or a student in uniform is at that funeral. These are the kind of values we have to inculcate to recognize our heroes. Give recognition to people who have gone before us, marked with a sign of contribution and national pride. And these are the things, I mean, if anything, Alwyn passing should tell us is that we need to stop and ask ourselves, how can we build a solid foundation so that the cultural and historical memories, landscape of Dominica can be perpetuated? If we don't do that now, I'm afraid we might lose the opportunity. In there? Helen?
Hi. Oh, we're closing?
No, we have
No, we can continue the conversation. We'll go up till about 8:30, another 15 minutes thereabout.
Yeah, well, Simeon has said it all.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would just like to go back to this collaborative effort with the government, with the private sector, the radio stations in particular. What was the name of this gentleman who used to play classical music? He was a Guyanese.
Can't remember. He's not rich. Aqua Harrison?
No. That one was Ghanaian. But no, he was a Guyanese Indian who, I think it was on a Sunday, would play a range of classical music. And I think when we are speaking of melody and bands, I think the radio stations have a very important part to play, to give a selection, a wide genre of music, from the classics to the folk music, so that our children can get an appreciation. Because remember, children are mothers now. And if they did not listen to classical music before or at school, they're not going to understand the value of music, music interpretation, composition. They're not going to understand it. If they're going to hear just 3 notes, that's all they're going to think. And to just go down, chip down the road, tuk, 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 tuk. Come on, I think we can do better than that. So I think the radio stations have a very important part to play as far as music is concerned, as far as drama is concerned as well. Again, the schools, it has to start from schools, because a lot of times it cannot start from the home because the parents are not able to. As you're saying, even teachers, Simeon, call to ask you certain things. When I worked at the cultural division, it was the same thing. When it's nearing independence season, we get a lot of calls. What is this? What is that? How is this one? What is it called? You know, and the names of various persons and who they were and what their contribution was. So the educational system, as you rightly said, must prioritize certain things, particularly for the children in the lower forms, first, second, third. So at least they have that foundation, they have that base, and they can carry it up. Old Mill Cultural Center, oh boy, it really needs looking at. And we need to really put a value, again, prioritize. What is our Creole culture being to us? What culture do we have now? What culture are we seeing? Who are we following now? We need to define those things. And then the people who learned from Alwyn, who learned drama from Alwyn, can put this into action and into theater, you know, and discuss the same thing Alwyn used to do with different issues in society. Then right. we need to do that now. We need to recommend. So it's let us have a kind of rebirth. After Maria, I thought, well, right, Dominica can have a rebirth. Maria really, whew, it put her to pieces. So we need to have a rebirth with COVID as well. We needed, we could say, let us have a rebirth after COVID, because COVID restricted us in so many ways. Did we use that time to reflect, to see what we could do to make Dominica better? Then, yes, and now the death of Alwyn. So we really have a lot of opportunity and occasion now for the rebirth of Dominica towards the betterment of the arts, towards a better people, a more polite people, a more conscious people, a more people who want excellence, you know, and make it a true Dominican society.
Right. Yeah,
let us not lose that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Britton here. Jacko, I'm going to push this one to you. And a question from Mornell here. He asked this question: do you think that the lack of social investment, it is one of negligence, or is that intentional? I guess by the powers that be.
Well, basically, even beyond that, I think part of it may be intentional, or when I say intentional, meaning that they don't see it as a priority, so they shift in other direction. They don't think anybody's going to say, oh, let's not do that because we don't want to do it, or we just want to slight somebody. I just think that our priorities are mismatched and not organized properly. True. But what I want to say is that when I interviewed Alwyn, we need to hear some of what he feels or his vision. He said, oh, that his 2 biggest achievements is the design of the flag, and he also said being bestowed the honorable degree of Doctor of Letters in 2011. He said in his formative years, his family members, his mom, his aunt, and his cousin, first cousin, Mabel Sissi Cordero, had a great love and respect for Dominica cultural arts and made a sterling contribution which influenced him to get into the arts themselves. Some of the icons who influenced him later was Professor Rex Nettleford of Jamaica, Sir Derek Walcott, Poet Laureate of St. Lucia, and Professor Roy Auger of a historian. He also stated that I asked him, are there any regrets of things you had not succeeded in doing while you were cultural officer? He said one of his biggest wishes is that to have a construction of a waterfall from Mongoose into a built lake in the botanical gardens along with other botanical attraction for local and visitors alike. Yes, he's mentioned that. Another dream, he said, is to see a series of tunnels being built in Dominica, the longest one from Wabincock to the bottom of Mont Daniel, and shorter ones along the Trans-Insular Road. And finally, he says, I asked him, what would be your wish for the future of the arts and culture in Dominica? And that goes right to what Elena said. He said that an arts and culture program is instituted in all primary and secondary schools. The updating of the R House of Culture includes a modern, fully equipped state-of-the-art performance and exhibition space. And I can well understand why Monel asked the question, because it seemed that it almost seems like it is more like by design than anything else. But I know better. It almost seems because when people do not really recognize certain things that people do, I mean, Simon mentioned some icons like Irvin Shilford. Irvin Shilford just passed away like just a normal cricketer, you know? So we don't even know our history, and that is so very important. And so basically, the two last one I mentioned about upgrading the Old Mill Cultural Center and also instituting, updating, or putting in, having the arts and cultural program in our schools. This certainly does not take any amount of money to do that. It just takes a vision and a commitment. So I really saying we can really start from there. Bring back the arts and cultural program into a secondary school, and that can start from September. It's a vision and a resolve to do it. And then we can see the others taking fruit as we go on. And that is my suggestion in keeping with what Orlin Bully's wishes will actually.
Yeah, and you know, I'd really like to support Ian on that, because if Loftus and Burton and Aileen and Ian, we just implement the original plan of Orlin for the Old Mill, that would be enough, you know, as a start.
Yeah.
Just that.
One at a time.
Just. Because I mean, way back in 1980, 79, 80, that was a magnificent plan for the Old Mill. Just that. We can maybe build upon it after. Just that original idea. And we're talking about 45 years later, what has become of it? You know, I don't want to say much about the big concrete stage that was placed in the middle, but that's for maybe for some other form of, you know, it's there now. Too late to cry about it. And secondly, he had a wonderful plan, as Ian mentioned, for the upgrading of the botanical gardens. And I mean, when I have maybe close to 50 photographs of the botanical gardens before, I mean, just an exhibition alone of the botanical gardens over the ages will inspire what the botanical garden should be like. Just by looking at the photographs of the old botanical gardens there. And Alvin had a wonderful idea to upgrade it. Even that can be done. One of the things I feel often sad about is that the ideas that Dominicans have about the development of their own country is very rarely taken on board.
Very true.
There are many prominent, resourceful, influential, concerned, talented Dominicans who have made numerous suggestions on the development of their own country, and they are hardly taken on board. And it is even more sad when somebody like Dr. Alwyn Bully's ideas are not taken on board. Do you know the level of respect that Jamaicans had for Alwyn Bully? I spent 6 months in Jamaica in one instance and 9 months in another instance, and Jamaicans were challenging me that Alwyn Bully was not from Dominica. I had to prove on many occasions that Alwyn Bully was from Dominica. Okay? I had to prove to them. Okay? Are we aware that when Jamaica celebrated its 40th anniversary of independence, the government of Jamaica asked for Alwyn Bully to plan, okay, and give ideas for the celebration of the day. Of course, he didn't do it because he was otherwise occupied. Are we aware of the contribution Alwyn made with Father Holong in Antigua, creating some of the most spectacular theatrical presentations? Are we aware that almost every musical group and drama group in Antigua, in Jamaica, okay, was without any question, okay, accepting the advice of Alwyn Bully? And we have Alwyn Bully, and there are many Dominicans around the world. We can develop ourselves, you know. We don't need foreign people to develop ourselves. There are many Dominicans who have come with a bank of ideas for the development of Dominica. We have Chip, we have Afimate, we have Raymond Lawrence even has given his ideas for the development of Dominica. Right? When we look at what is happening to the French Quarter of Roseau, that is slowly being eroded away. That is a major historical area of Roseau that is just being allowed to rot away, and all kind of buildings are going up there. Are we going to listen to the people of Ship? I think that is one of my saddest thing. And many places around Dominica, all houses, Aileen, as we drove around Dominica, the old estate houses and so, that people knew were major landmarks in the villages, and nobody's doing anything about it. But the saddest part of it is that there are many Dominicans who have made significant, wonderful, progressive suggestions for the development of Dominica, and they have not, and Alwyn Bull is one of them. I think coming out from this evening's discussion, I hope it is not being seen, oh, Aileen Burton is making it, and Ian, and worse again, Simeon Joseph is making it. So let us close our ears and our hearts. No, no. The name Alwyn Bully, the man Alwyn Bully, the legacy of Alwyn Bully, the contribution of Alwyn Bully, the towering Dominican icon and historical figure that Alwyn Bully was. Just the name Alwyn Bully deserves to be given every level of seriousness, of consideration. And let us impel his name and his passing on. I call it a transcendence, You know, he has transcended, okay? To evoke in us a responsiveness. Listen now to listen. Listen to the ideas. Listen to the suggestions. Take into account the plans. Open our hearts to those great ideas that came from him and many others. And let us now re-indigenize the development of Dominica. We don't need anybody to come to do it for us. We don't need any outsider to tell us how to develop Dominica. Alwyn Bully has been a champion of local resource as to where we can go in Dominica. And if we had to do him justice, a lot of suggestions have been made tonight, and maybe I can close here. A lot of suggestions have been made tonight, but I think, again, the person that Alwyn Bully was should cause us to think and say, how can we, as Dominicans, right, how you call it, strengthen our indigenous philosophy, okay? Look at our practices and how we prioritize what we do as Dominicans for Dominica, by Dominicans.
True. Guys, as we about to bring that conversation to a wrap in just a while, all important conversation celebrating the life and legacy of our fallen brother, icon at that, national icon at that. There's a question that I want us to answer before we leave. Coming from one Thai Francis, is it? He's asking here, she's asking here, who was the one that did the painting on the Treasury building in the 80s? And I want to add, what was the significance of, you know, erasing that painting? If you guys have an answer to that, and we'll wrap up in a while.
I don't.
Anybody?
I don't know who painted that.
Okay.
I'm not sure who did the painting, but taking out of the painting, I'm not sure if that's one of those guys. I don't think that's Alwyn. But in terms of removing the painting, I think it was said at the time it was a sore part of our history, which they did not want other generations to know why it was there. That was what I was hearing from the grapevine. It wasn't officially said, but I think, you know, that is symbolic of us just generally as a people erasing our history right through. For instance, we have a maroon just outside by Christian, just the cenotaph, and it has no name. And right in the old market, That's where they sold a lot of slaves, and Jacko lost his life there. He has beheaded there and all that.
And
They really promoted that as an area. So we have a history in Dominica of erasing, whether physically or mentally, we are erasing our culture and our history. And as civilians, we need to find
in addition to the memory of many people whom we rich people would not remember as well.
Oh yes. And this one about the people is really done many times maliciously. We just figure that person should not be known about, we should know about them, especially if they have a certain political persuasion or so. And I make no bones about saying that it happens a number of times. But we as a people, we need to get out from that and need to rethink our direction in life. We need to rethink. And the persons who have really made a success. And all in Bole, that's his night tonight. And he is one of those Dominicans. I call him the cultural elder of the century. He's the one who had made some really big impacting things in Dominica. I mean, he is very instrumental in the stuff we have at the roundabout in Goodwill. It always doesn't represent the person who represents the Soror. The original one that was there, he was very instrumental in all forms, in the cultural division. He started it and so on. And a guy like that, really and truly, we should not have waited until he passed. Albeit he passed, but now we can make amends because his children are alive, his family members are alive, the bullies are alive, and they deserve to see some edifice or something named after this gentleman. We need to institute that at our schools in terms of making our school children know who this gentleman is. Even a short story competition, for instance, even this year or something, or expository competition, whereby you talk about the life of Pauline Bull and people learn about it. In so doing, even our other heroes who are alive, people like Dr. Sorrento who passed, and those persons who made such great contributions to us in Dominica, their lives should be documented. Calypso ability to a certain extent, but we need to document it so that our children can learn from it. And we should not repeat that again. We should not allow another cultural icon to die. We should not allow a Gordon Henderson to die. We should not allow certain people in Dominica to pass away, and we do not know the origins and what they stood for. Right now, they're using a song of Exile one that I'm told by Poirier. It is being big in Guadalupe and Martin. They actually use it for their thesis to study history, and so on. We don't do those things in Dominica. We just look at people where they stand and their political views and so forth, but their contributions surpass all that by far. And we need to get over that. And that's the hill I'm crying. Even coming to this program, some people want me, Some people want me and say, Jackson, boy, you good on that program? That is how we are in Dominica. It's a strange thing, but it's the real situation we are facing. And it's an uphill battle, but I'm up for it. I've played my part. I'm now have touched my 60s, and I really hope that some young person will take it on board, because I'm trying to impart what I know. I'm sure Sidney has done the same as a principal. He's still doing that. Elizabeth is not here now, but she's still doing her stuff in terms of water cultural development and so on. And some young person, we cannot do it. We cannot do it continuously. We will also have our demise like Alwyn in the not too distant future. And obviously we need some young persons to take on the mantle and say, look, this is the direction we're supposed to go. And this I want to end with tonight. Please, that Dominican people, young people, please take an introspective view, a look at your culture, your arts, what it stands for, the music you play, the lyrics you let out and so forth. And let us build a society where everybody can learn from, and we can build this country and move this country forward. This is my wish for Dominica.
Yeah.
I like to say at the same time, I apologize for losing my signal. I suspect my battery went low, and as a result of that,
Jackson, we wanted to
beautiful photo. But
Jackson, we want to do at least 2 lines in the song that you
penned.
Yes,
just run it. Yes,
and Triumph did it. So we're gonna do that now, and then we'll ask you guys for your wrap-up statements in just a while. All right. Let's do this one. Penned by the man himself. He's right here tonight talking to us, Mr. Ian Jackson, sung by Brother Triumph. All win, he calls this one.
All subculture. Woe unto a nation who never respect and preserve its culture, only to showcase talent for the visitors, living things after politicians, stadium sportsmen and civil servants. But what about the cultural stalwarts that put this nation right on top? because we'll all lose if we don't promote our cultural elders. Yes, we'll all lose. Do away with Windsor and Queen Victoria. Yes, we'll all lose. Generations will be lost for sure. So let's all win. At our house we changing to all win. Okay, boy. People who have done lesser, we build buildings up to their fame. What about House of Culture? Cause the Arawak have no name. We know the Kalinago Braves defend we, and we know the chief identity. Now that the house renovating, I suggesting a rechristening. Because we all lose if we don't promote our cultural elders. Yes, we'll all lose. Do away with Windsor and Queen Victoria. Yes, we'll all lose. Generations will be lost for sure. So let's all win. Our house we're changing to all win.
All right, very, very powerful words indeed here, written by the man, Brother Ian Jackson, sung by the Triumph himself. Thank you very much, Jackson, for doing this one again as we on our brother here, Brother Dr. Alwyn Bully. You basically, had some insight way before that brother died, that brother passed. You decided in song, that is Ian Jackson, that at least the Arawak House of Culture should be named after our fallen icon in Dominica.
Certainly.
Yes. General people, we know, we can continue on and on, but, we have an audience there as well, and they too may want to be released at this time. So as we go around the table, let me start with the queen of tonight's conversation, Miss Burton, your final comments, wrap-up comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking me to join your program. I am very honored and humbled by that. I hope I have made a good contribution. What I want to say now to those listening and to those in the higher echelons of our government, listen to the message and not the messenger, so that the footprints of Alwyn will not be blown away by the passage of time. Thank you.
True. Thank you very, very much indeed. You did justice to the topic tonight, and sure, you did justice to your friend, as you called him, Dr. Alwyn Bull, in terms of your contribution tonight. Thank you very much. Yes. Brother Jackson, your final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, man, like Ellen, I want to say thank you very much to you, Brother Lofty. And, my whole aim in life, even through my writings, as people know, I've been 30-something years writing for the papers non-stop. And my whole aim, I try to promote people like that. I mean, not just Alwyn, but a number of persons and shows and, theater and everything else. It's my life. And it's my dream. I mean, when I look at Dr. Honeychurch, I like to see him as a historian of of our history and so on. But I see myself as a historical person who preserves our art. And so I'm very happy that you had me on this program. I'm very thrilled to be persons like Simeon. I've been listening to him a number of times as a former principal, and he has made some valid contribution. I was really happy to make my pitch because, as you have said before, that I have made, some. I've asked for the Arawak House to be named after, so I trust after this program, hit some nerves here and there, because I think it's a very good program, a lot of good contributions, and I just think that if one or two of the things that we've suggested are implemented, then we can see a brighter future in terms of our cultural development and the values that we instill in our young people for the future. So good night, everybody, and thanks for having me.
All right, Brother Jackson, thank you very much again for, braving it, as it were. I took note of when you said that some persons wanted to dissuade you from coming to the program, but you're a man of your word. And so thank you very much for your contribution tonight, bro. Thank you. Brother Simeon, yes.
No one can ever persuade me or dissuade me to do what I think I should do and ought to do. Okay. So, Lofty, thanks for doing this program. Aileen, it was a pleasure. I could say being with you again, Ian, again, equal pleasure, because you preceded me in grammar school, and it was senior students like you that inspired me to take my education seriously. You, Gabriel, Christian, Barbara, Richards, this people there, Mike Gibroni. So I'm happy for that. But Lofty, with your permission, I'd like to, first of all, thank Anita and, well, first of all, Alwyn's parents for giving us him, his brother Colin for being there, and Anita for allowing Alwyn to be what he had been to Dominica. Okay? And every great man is every one of us who had mingled with Alwyn know of the real second half that Anita was. So Anita, I want to thank you for sharing and sacrificing your husband for Dominica and for people like me, and allowing him to be what he could have been for us. I want to thank Shade and Brent as well for understanding the fact that your father had to be what he had to be for Dominica, for the region, and the wider world. And I'm happy to see that both of you are emulating him so wonderfully, and his spirit lives on in both of you. The song in Lion King that's he lives in me, and he lives in you. Hats off to you. So in closing again, I'd like to say it was a pleasure being part of this program. And for the sake of Dominica, let's continue to do what we have to do. Let's continue to speak what we have to say. Let's continue to work equally as hard in what we have to do, and never give up the thought, the struggle, the energy, or the understanding that we are doing it for our country, for those who come after us, and because we feel we have been given that God-given right and responsibility that while we walk this earth, we plant our seed well where we are planted and bloom. And people like Alwyn showed us how to bloom. Thank you, Lofty.
Thank you very, very much indeed, guys. Let's do this. In a while, I'll come back to do the final wrapping up. Thank you very much, guys. Do enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Triumph 2022. Rechristened House of Culture. Woe unto a nation who never respect and preserve its culture, only to showcase talent for the visitors, naming things after politicians, stadium sportsmen and civil servants. But what about the cultural stalwarts that put this nation right on top? Because we'll all lose if we don't promote your cultural elders. Yes, we'll all lose. Do away with Windsor and Queen Victoria. Yes, we'll all lose. Generations will be lost for sure. So let's all win. At our house, we're changing to all win.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in the listening and the viewing audience, thank you very much for your patience indeed. An excellent conversation tonight. Read the life and legacy of our fallen hero, Dr. Alwyn Bully.
People who have done lesser, we build buildings up to their fame. What about House of Culture? Cause the Arawak have no name. We know the Kalinago Braves defend we, and we know the chief identity. Now that the house renovating, I suggesting a rechristening. Because we all lose if we don't promote our cultural elders. Yes, we'll all lose. Do away with Windsor and Queen Victoria.
So the very, very big question tonight that was answered at least.
We'll be lost for sure. So let's all win. Our house we're changing.
What can we do as a people as we remember the life and legacy of Brother Dr. Alwyn Bully? If he was on that panel tonight, what if he had said to us,
All-win design of flag. The nation greatest symbol, ruler in I ruler the play. Money Miss Millie and many more. UNESCO chief advisor. The first cultural chief, songwriter, painter, and artist. That's why his name stand out like this. Because we'll all lose if we don't promote our cultural elders.
So Dominicans, that is it for me here. I gotta pack my bag and make some tracks in just a while, huh?
Victoria, yes, we'll all lose. Generations will be lost for sure.
But I just want to say a special thank you indeed to the 3 special invited guests here tonight in the program. Alice brother Simeon Joseph, brother Ian Jackson, and the queen of the night, I call her Miss Aileen Burton. And yes, what would the program be without your company as well? Those of you in the listening and viewing audience tonight.
Chubby Gordon Ophelia, not even the late Jeff Joe. Up to now they can't find a place to immortalize their memory. The Marina Bissanotap have no name. Antiqual and still worthy of mention. Now with this renovation, I suggest all in name will be positioned. Because we'll all lose if we don't promote our cultural elders. Yes, we'll all lose. Do away with
nice play on words here from the brother Ian Jackson who penned this one.
Generation will be lost.
Calls this one All Win.
All win. Our house be changing to all win.
And I know most Dominicans will be in agreement indeed to change the name of our House of Culture to the All Wins House of Culture. Dominicans, that is it from me here on behalf of the Civic Vibes team, putting another splendid program together. Thank you very much. See you next week, same time, same place, 6 o'clock for another Civic Vibes program. I'm gone. I'm out. Bye-bye now. I love you.